This story begins on a dark and stormy night, as a bolt of lightning illuminates the windows of an old building. A young, white-haired man walks down the stairs toward his apartment. He then opens the door and upon entering, announces to his parents that he's home, breaking the silence. His parents greet him warmly in the kitchen. His mother asks which one of her precious sons has returned, and his father asks him to help with the soup for dinner. Suddenly, the scene turns into a bloodbath. His father, with his head impaled, calls him lazy and tells him to go watch TV. His mother, completely ignoring the horror, questions her husband about asking their son for help, and then asks the young man how his blind date went. Faced with that distorted and terrifying vision of his parents, the young man's face contorts in pure anguish and torment. Then, the scene shifts to a calmer conversation. He explains that the girl from the date needs more time to think, as he doesn't want to rush things. The silhouettes of his parents appear against the window, where the same storm from before seems to be getting worse outside. His mother then insists that he can't stay home forever, and that they'll only rest easy when he finds a nice girl to marry. The pressure from his parents and the conflicting memories cause his expression to darken, revealing a deep inner turmoil. That's when the image of a bloody cleaver slamming down on a cutting board violently flashed through his mind. Tired of fighting against these memories and the pressure, he finally gives in and agrees to their request, saying he'll do as they wish. However, the sound of a TV report about a box office record shatters the daydream, bringing the narrative back to reality. He's actually alone in his living room, sitting on a couch while staring at his phone screen, lost in thought. As he looks at his phone, he remembers that ever since he returned from the gathering of the reincarnators, his talent has been completely stolen. He remembers falling, thinking how, even as an experienced horror manga artist, this was the first time he'd ever felt a true shock. As he sank into the water, he couldn't remember how he fell, or if someone had pulled him out. It was the intense pain that woke him from that state of unconsciousness. Then, he wakes up screaming in his bed, with black marks spreading across his arm as if etched into his flesh, fearing that the day they covered his body would be his final day. However, for a genius manga artist, taking away his creative talent is no different from taking his life. Losing his memory and his career trapped him in this house. No matter how far he tries to run, he always finds himself back at the front door or waking up in his familiar bed. To make matters worse, he's sure he's supposed to be an orphan, but somehow this mother and father are in his room. The woman asks her husband to take it easy, as she believes their son will understand everything sooner or later. The man flashes a sinister smile, revealing his sharp teeth. She then suggests they introduce some suitable girls to their son. However, she soon complains that they've already done that a few times, but the result is always the same. The young man notices the repetition in the conversation, as she always says the girl needs time. But you never know how much time that means. He realizes that these same actions and lines have been repeating for one whole week, noting that these parents seem to be straight out of his manga. That's when he understood it wasn't a nightmare. It was his own manga invading reality, with villains from his debut work pretending to be his parents. Meanwhile, the news on TV announces the disappearance of a dozen hostesses from a nightclub, leaving behind only a bloody scene with no trace of the culprit. A breaking news report on TV covers an extremely serious case, with the police asking for help in identifying a man seen on surveillance footage. Shocked, the young man realizes that news report never existed before and wonders why it's happening now, right in front of him. Just then, the TV turns off by itself, plunging the room into a tense silence. That's when the figure of his mother appears behind him. Shortly after, his father appears by his side, calling him son, and completing the intimidating circle. Sitting around him, they insist they're getting older and hope he'll settle down and build a career soon, as he can't be alone forever. With a tired smile, he interrupts them, predicting that next they'll say they've already found new girls to introduce him to. The two just stare at him, confirming his terrible suspicion that the cycle is about to repeat once more. Only this time, his mother grabs his face and says they've already chosen a bride for him, stating that today is an auspicious day for the engagement. Desperate, he yells for them to let him go, not understanding what they're talking about, as he tries to break free from her hands. His eyes widen in pure panic upon hearing the words, auspicious day. Realizing the situation is much worse than he imagined, he remembers the rule of the ghost parents. They need to find a happy couple to take their place before the auspicious day, or they will be tormented for eternity. In that instant, his father transforms into a monstrous creature that traps him with blood tendrils, screaming that he must get married today. The creature holds him tightly as he struggles, screaming for it to let him go, completely terrified. Amid the chaos, his father's voice echoes in his mind, pleading for him, Fanfan, not to resist. His mother, with a monstrous, blood-soaked face, grabs his hair tightly, insisting she's doing this for his own good. Completely terrified and hopeless, Fanfan cries out for his real parents, who are no longer there to save him. That's when his father lost his patience, bellowing that if Fanfan didn't get married that day, they would have no way to survive. The mother squeezes his face with her blood-stained hands, repeating that all of this is for Fanfan's own good. The father then tries to manipulate him, saying that once he has his own family, they won't have to worry anymore. Unable to endure the physical and psychological torture any longer, Fanfan finally gives in and screams that he promises to do what they want, begging them to let him go. Upon hearing his promise, the two monsters exchange a satisfied look, with a triumphant and sinister smile appearing on the father's face. They then celebrate that the plan worked and that he agreed, as the blood tendrils that bound him finally retract. In an instant, the two of them return to a nearly normal appearance, though their eyes still glow with an unsettling light. Then the scene shifts to the front door, where they appear smiling and casually announce that they're back. Fanfan is paralyzed with horror as he sees them enter, accompanied by a mysterious woman in a red dress. His ghost mother surprisingly calls the new woman mother and invites her in, leaving Fanfan even more confused. The newcomer simply comments that it's still raining hard outside and that their coats got completely soaked. Ignoring the tense atmosphere, the parents announce they've brought Fanfan a gift and open a bloody sack, eager to see the contents. At that moment, the image of a woman in a red dress, lifeless and bloody on the floor, flashes through Fanfan's mind like a terrifying vision. In a panic, he remembers the news and the rules of his manga. For the process to work, a man and a woman must voluntarily form an engagement to replace them. With his face in his hand, he can't hide the sheer terror as he understands what's about to happen. He approaches the woman's body and realizes, to his astonishment, that she's still alive. That's when the shadows of the missing hostesses appear, laughing sinisterly, as they want a living person for the ritual. The revelation that they intend to use a living person leaves him completely paralyzed with fear. Without giving him time to react, the two parents grab him and drag him over, telling him to come see the bride they've chosen. He then struggles furiously. A mysterious flame erupts in his hand as he burns one of their arms. Surprised by the pain, the monster wonders how that little brat managed to hurt him. Fanfan stares at his own flaming hand, as shocked as his captors by this sudden power. His mother complains that the gift for their daughter-in-law got stained, but assures them she has more white silk ribbons ready. Just then, white silk ribbons bind him tightly, immobilizing his arms and leaving him completely defenseless. He struggles but realizes the ghost's hand doesn't burn, and he still doesn't know how to use the white flame. The two parents then drag him along with the unconscious woman, forcing them to stand side by side. They push Fanfan's and the woman's heads together, forcibly starting the terrible ceremony. The two mothers hover over them with sinister smiles, ordering them to bow to each other as husband and wife. Helpless, Fanfan can only cry, feeling the weight of this horrible situation with nowhere to run. One of the ghost women then asks if he didn't like their choice and suggests swapping her for someone prettier and sexier. With a simple snap of her fingers, she puts an even crueler plan into motion. That's when other monsters enter through the front door, dragging more bodies of bloody victims into the house. In seconds, the floor is covered with the bodies of the women who were brutally taken from the nightclub. Just then, an army of ghosts materializes, forming a circle around Fanfan and the victims, all smiling macabrely. His fake parents begin to shout in unison, demanding that he marry one of the girls immediately. The cry of "marry her" echoes through the room, filling the air with unbearable pressure. Soon, the victims' shadows join the chorus as a new pink-haired figure appears, also ordering the marriage. With his face covered in blood and tears, Fanfan stares at the horror, completely overcome with despair. Until, in the midst of his anguish, the white flame in his hand begins to glow again, more intensely than before. A shadowy creature with sharp teeth appears before him, reinforcing that he will get married right now. However, this time Fanfan clenches his fist with determination, focusing all his energy on that mysterious flame. With a swift movement, he unleashes a powerful blast of fire that hits one of the parents' head on, instantly setting him ablaze. Desperate, the other father screams for someone to stop him, while his partner is consumed by the white flames. Amid the chaos in the room, the glow of the white flames reflects on Zhao Fan's face as he fights against the tendrils and ghosts trying to restrain him. Even with his body pressed against the floor, Zhao Fan feels a strange energy emanating from his hand, where luminous symbols appear as a last hope against the creatures. Just then, he extends his arm toward the exit. Suddenly, a metallic click echoes through the room as the door's lock is turned from the outside, interrupting the macabre clamor of the entities demanding the wedding. Then the door bursts open, revealing a female silhouette enveloped in a blinding aura of light that cuts through the darkness of this domestic nightmare. Before everyone, a young pink-haired woman appears calmly, stepping over puddles of blood while completely ignoring the horror that fills the room. Surprised by the interruption, the fake parents and the victims freeze, staring at the new figure who seems to emanate a pressure even more crushing than their own. With an enigmatic smile that hides ulterior motives, the girl murmurs that she's finally found him, fixing her gaze directly on Zhao Fan. This is Xiami, his supposed fiancé, who politely greets her aunt and uncle, as if she were just dropping by for a social visit. But the surrounding carnage doesn't seem to bother her in the slightest, as she walks among the monsters with an unsettling elegance. Turning her attention to Zhao Fan, she looks at him with an unreadable expression, analyzing the humiliating situation the young man is in. She then ironically asks if he's really in the middle of a wedding ceremony, maintaining a calm tone of voice that contrasts with the chaos. As the fake father holds Zhao Fan by the shoulders, the girl asks if there's something she's not doing well enough for him to want to replace her. After all, she wants to know why he's trying to marry another woman, reminding him of his promise that he would love only her for the rest of his life. Perhaps the fury is starting to show on her face, as Xiami suspects something is very wrong with this family's intentions. Suddenly, Xiami's sharp blade cuts through the air and strikes the fake father's face, sending dark blood spewing across the room as the monster screams in absolute agony. Furious at the possible betrayal, the young woman brandishes her weapon and questions if Zhao Fan really intended to abandon her to marry someone else. With a quick and lethal movement, she pushes away the surrounding creatures, demonstrating a power that intimidates even the most aggressive ghosts in the house. Faced with that display of strength, Zhao Fan points to the woman in the red dress and announces that he now wants her to be his new mother. Surprised by the change in attitude, the fake parents exchange complicit glances, realizing that the power dynamic inside the residence has just shifted dramatically. Dark energies dissipate through the air as the tension rises, making it clear that Xiami's presence has altered the fate of that macabre ceremony. Amazed by the girl's aggressiveness, the ghost father comments that his son has refined taste, comparing her arrival to the descent of an angel straight from heaven. Zhao Fan seizes the opportunity to state that Xiami is infinitely superior to any of the women his father had tried to push on him before. Observing her pink hair and carving knife, the young man finally connects the dots and recognizes her as one of his most dangerous and detailed creations. After all, the visual details and the weapons she carries are trademarks of a character he himself designed in his glory days as an author. Convinced by the young woman's beauty and strength, the ghost mother declares that she will only accept Xiami as a daughter-in-law, forbidding Zhao Fan from looking at any other woman. Instantly switching to a docile tone, Xiami thanks her aunt for the compliment with a smile that hides her true predatory nature. Shortly after, she suggests with false modesty that perhaps she should start calling the entity mother, sealing the cohabitation agreement in that bizarre place. The fake father celebrates internally upon noticing that she's alive, believing he has found the perfect prey to satisfy the desires of the ancestral ghosts. Lost in thought, Zhao Fan wonders why a character of his own creation is so obsessed with him, since he never wrote romance into his works. Zhao Fan's eyes widen as it finally clicks, and he associates the name Sujiame with the memory of his own old drafts. He recalls that she was the great Yandere villain of the manga, the sculptor, a character so obsessed that she wanted to turn the protagonist into an eternal work of art to keep him all to herself. With this, he understands that Sushame is practically invincible, a max-level powerhouse who can only be destroyed by her great love, also named Zhao Fan. However, a cruel doubt hangs in his mind, as he can't understand why a character from one story has invaded the plot of the Chamera Demon story. The revelation that the strange marks on his arm react to her presence leads him to question if there's a deeper connection between him and this relentless villain. Ignoring his confusion, Xiami throws herself into Zhao Fan's arms, exclaiming happily that they can finally be together after so much time apart. With her face pressed against his, she whispers that she missed his skin and his bones, stating that the days must have been extremely difficult without her around. Furthermore, she leans against his chest, confident that he was also thinking of her and the marriage promise that would bring them back home. Touched by confusing flashes, Zhao Fan puts a hand to his head, trying to process the fragmented memories that begin to flood his tormented mind. In an instant, he finds himself mentally transported to a dark dam, remembering the drowning scene where the same marriage promise had been made. The sheer volume of information overwhelms his fragile mind, and the sharp pain prevents him from retrieving the rest of the memories lost on that fateful day. Bothered by his sudden silence, Xiami tightens her hug, questioning if he stopped talking because he was lying to her. Under the crushing pressure of her body, Zhao Fan's bones crackle, and the pain becomes unbearable, revealing the sick and terrifying way she expresses love. Determined not to succumb, he decides he needs to pacify her first, so he forces out the words and assures her he never forgot the promise to marry her. Xiami's eyes shine with pure joy upon hearing that, and she asks with a radiant smile if he's not lying, willing to do anything as long as they stay together. With a comforting smile, Zhao Fan holds Xiami's face and says he loves her, asking her to trust him completely to calm the girl's nerves. However, the tension returns when everyone's attention is diverted to the ghost mother, whose belly begins to swell in a grotesque and threatening manner. Alerted by the movement, the fake parents call out to Xiami, interrupting the romantic moment with a new and dangerous macabre assault. Without wasting time, the ghost mother offers a steaming bowl of soup, insisting with a forced friendliness for her daughter-in-law to try the special family recipe. Thanking her cordially, Xiaomi accepts the bowl from the entity's hands with a naive smile, seemingly oblivious to the danger hidden in the offer. Looking at the reddish liquid, she sees her own distorted reflection on the soup's surface, which looks more like a cauldron of boiling blood. With unsettling enthusiasm, the fake father assures her they used only the best ingredients, eager for her to drink it and thus become part of the family. Commenting on the appetizing aroma, Xiaomi deduces the broth was made with her uncle's leg bones, joking that this must be love down to the bone. She then drinks the soup, but it isn't long before the bowl falls to the floor and shatters into several pieces. Blood splatters from her mouth as she coughs violently, her body weakens, and she starts to collapse toward the floor. Zhao Fan quickly runs and manages to catch her before she falls, feeling the weight of guilt mixed with despair as he supports the young woman's trembling body. With teary eyes, Xiaomei accuses him of knowing the soup was poisoned from the start and questions why he didn't stop her from drinking the deadly liquid. Weak and breathless, she confronts him, asking if he really cares about her, suspecting he let her get hurt, just so he could abandon her for good. Zhao Fan doesn't know what to think, as Su Xiaomei's power is unparalleled, and that soup shouldn't have had the slightest effect on her. But he soon understands that she's acting to deceive the fake parents, and decides to play along to manipulate the situation in his favor. Just then, the pot falls to the floor with a dull thud as a sinister, reddish aura begins to emanate from the kitchen. Consumed by malice, the ghost mother warns that this body no longer belongs to her and demands they unite to form the new parents. Faced with this bizarre threat, Xiaomi just tilts her head and innocently asks what this union would mean. Suddenly, she grabs Zhao Fan's arm and celebrates euphorically, interpreting everything as proof that he wants to merge with her forever. That's when a brutal attack of dark energy struck the ghost parents head on, interrupting any macabre plan. With screams of absolute agony, the female entity is brutally torn apart in the air as her spectral body disintegrates into pieces. Shortly after, the male monster meets the same terrible fate, screaming in despair as he is consumed by that overwhelming force. Observing the destruction, Zhao Fan holds Xiaomi and confirms his suspicions that her power was indeed devastating. But the dust had barely settled when a new sinister figure emerged from the shadows, holding an old camera. Shocked by the appearance, the young man immediately recognizes the man and identifies him as the infamous camera demon. Surrounded by a deadly aura, the villain laments the loss of his creatures, calling them his most perfect pair of parents. Without wasting time, the maniac raises the camera and announces he's going to take a wedding photo of the two of them. He then flashes a psychopathic smile and states that as soon as the flash goes off, they will all become a real family. In that instant, memories of his old drawing studio flood Zhao Fan's mind like a reality check. He remembers sitting at his desk, creating his first story and drawing that exact psychopathic villain. Determined to create something authentic back then, he had chosen to base the monster's origin on his own life experiences. This creature was conceived as an unstable orphan who grew up in an orphanage, and always envied the children who received love from their parents. To try to fill this void, the man became a wedding photographer to capture others' happiness, but it only deepened his pain. Consumed by envy, the photographer went mad, unable to accept that everyone had a perfect family while he rotted alone. Driven by madness, he began to hunt happy couples and imprison their souls in his camera to steal the love he never had. However, knowing that all that stolen affection was a lie, the villain couldn't bear the weight of his guilt and took his own life. Back in the present, the terrifying figure of the photographer remains standing there, with the lens pointed directly at them. With a firm gaze, Zhao Fan calls the monster by his real name and asks if he doesn't find his own existence pathetic. Completely caught off guard by the young man's audacity, the villain lowers his guard slightly and demands to know how he discovered his name. Without hesitation, the protagonist throws his entire sad origin story in his face, from the orphanage to the sick envy he felt for others. Irritated by these truths being exposed so easily, the ghost grits his teeth and tells the kid to shut his mouth. Even under threat, Zhao Fan narrates every step of the man's decline, from photography to the brutal slayings. Consumed by uncontrollable rage, Lin Chuan screams that people who grew up with loving parents have no right to judge him. Despite the burst of anger, the young man assures him that no one in the world understands his mind better than his own creator. Shocked, the demon hears the revelation that he is just a character created from the personal suffering of the one standing before him. Suddenly, a lethal blow slashes through the air toward the young man's neck in a swift and cowardly attack. Driven mad by the revelation, the photographer charges forward, blaming Zhao Fan for condemning him to a life of pure misery. Fueled by absolute hatred, The villain brandishes a gleaming knife and swears he will murder his creator right there. Thanks to a sharp pang in his chest, the protagonist realizes while trying to dodge that Xiaomi's tight hug has fractured his ribs. With the blade millimeters from his face and his body weakened, the young man concludes in despair that he won't be able to escape his end. That's when Xiaomi's hand intercepted the knife in midair, stopping the deadly attack with terrifying ease. With a sharp and menacing glare, the pink-haired girl warns that the monster is not worthy of taking her beloved's life. In a quick change of tone, she presses the knife to his chin and says that now they're even for the little act with the poisoned soup. As if they were alone in the room, the two begin to bicker about their relationship, completely ignoring the psychopath. Utterly humiliated at being ignored, the photographer snaps his fingers to regain control of the situation. Immediately, the floor begins to tremble as dense shadows spread across the floorboards toward the couple. Surrounded by his manipulated victims, the demon orders them all to attack the two intruders who dared to mock his family. Taking the lead in the battle, Xiaomi confirms with her beloved that she can get him out of there if she eliminates this useless trash. Without waiting for an answer, she lunges forward like a pink hurricane and begins to tear the zombies apart with attacks of extreme violence. With an insane murderous aura, the girl hurls the bloody corpses away in a single destructive blow. In a matter of seconds, the room transforms into a literal slaughterhouse as she dismembers every entity that crosses her path. Surrounded by mangled bodies and thorny branches, the assassin turns to Xiaofan and casually asks if she looks pretty. Pressured by this display of insanity, the young man just swallows hard and tries to maintain his composure in front of his own creation. On the other side, the demon raises the camera once more and screams that he's sending them all to heck right now. When the deadly flash goes off, Zhao Fan senses the danger and begs the girl to throw him out of there immediately. Promptly, she launches his body through the air, allowing him to land a direct, powerful kick right on the lens of the cursed equipment. Just then, the camera emits a sinister glow as it activates its special ability to freeze anything to its demise. A wave of paralyzing energy sweeps through the air, covering the room with a chilling aura as the protagonist plummets toward the ground. With impressive agility, he spins in the air and manages to land perfectly on the floor, escaping the freezing beam. At that very moment, the mysterious mark etched on his wrist begins to pulse violently, emitting an intense, golden light. Surprised by the sensation, the young man tries to lift his arm and panics when he realizes his muscles aren't responding to his commands. Across the room, the photographer's eyes widen as he sees the lens of his precious camera crack and explode into 1,000 pieces. With the object's destruction, the cursed photographs begin to tear on their own, freeing the souls of the imprisoned victims. The manipulated corpses feel the seal break and begin to disintegrate, letting out screams of agony as they disappear. The last wedding photo falls to the floor, already consumed by black flames, marking the end of the control the villain held over them. Freed from their mental slavery, the fake parents regain their dark consciousness and face the one responsible for so much humiliation. Overcome by a vengeful fury, the monsters charge at the photographer and begin to tear him apart with their merciless claws. From a safe distance, Zhao Fan just watches coldly and encourages the entities to seek their deserved revenge. The Chimera demon screams in pain as he is completely devoured by the very family he tried to create by force. His screams echo through the room until they turn into a final, agonizing gasp before his body is reduced to nothing. With the villain's demise, a blast of spiritual energy sweeps through the room, purifying the heavy aura that had dominated the house. Unexpectedly, the black smoke left by the monster flies toward the young man and is absorbed by the amulet on his wrist. With this newfound power flowing through his veins, he soon deduces that he has just stolen his enemy's freezing ability. Before disappearing completely, the mother's spectral figure gives a silent bow to thank him for freeing their souls. Despite the bleeding in his eye from the strain, he celebrates the new technique and concludes that 3 seconds is perfect for survival. Worried about his condition, Xiaomi quickly approaches and cleans the young man's face, saying she hates to see him get hurt like that. He tries to calm her down by saying that power always comes at a price, while wondering about the true origin of those marks. In the middle of this peaceful moment, the protagonist asks the question that's been on his mind and asks how she managed to get out of the manga. With an enigmatic smile on her lips, the pink-haired girl leans in and says that it was the boy himself who awakened her. Completely confused by that answer, Zhao Fan retorts without understanding a thing, but she just laughs and asks if he's already forgotten everything. Overcome by uncontrollable fury, the girl's eyes widen and she accuses the young man of blatantly lying to her. With an oppressive aura emanating from her body, she advances, claiming he doesn't even remember the promise he made to her. Completely out of her mind, the assassin raises her knife and swears she will end his life right there without any mercy. In a desperate attempt to de-escalate the crisis, Zhao Fan pulls the young woman's body close and seals her lips with a sudden kiss. Surprised by the impulsive act, the girl lowers her weapon as shock slowly replaces her bloodlust. Seizing the opportunity, he hugs her tightly, ignoring the pain of his own injuries to maintain control of the situation. Shortly after pulling away, the protagonist lets out a groan of exhaustion and questions what's happening to his own body. Tired and weak, he collapses to his knees on the floor, while his beloved watches the change with a look full of concern. Mysterious marks begin to glow intensely on his face, consuming his life force in an overwhelming and painful way. Feeling an agonizing anguish, the young man clutches his torn chest and begins to doubt if he's still trapped inside the real world. Immediately, Xiaomei holds the boy's face and assures him that this is indeed the real world to which he belongs. She explains that those symbols are devouring his life, but reveals that absorbing ghostly powers can stabilize them. With a mischievous smile on her lips, the villainess leans in provocatively and offers her own help to solve that lethal problem. Driven by ulterior motives, she suggests they do something pleasurable, stating that her dark energy is the best possible nourishment. Without giving him time to answer, the girl pounces on the young man as he desperately screams for her to control her instincts. Fending off the girl's dangerous advance, Zhao Fan demands to know the true origin of those marks and how she escaped the manga. Faced with the direct question, the pink-haired young woman just smiles and turns the question back on him, saying that he himself was the one who awakened her. Completely lost by that enigmatic statement, the author lets out a confused sigh, not understanding what she was getting at. Her expression changing in an instant, the villainess frowns and furiously questions if the marriage promise was just a sham. Desperate not to be offed right there, he raises his hands and tries to explain, arguing that he's suffering from severe memory problems. Pressing her body against his, she confirms his story and reveals that those symbols appeared on the day the Great Dam exploded. Recalling the recent nightmare with the fake parents, the protagonist begs to know what actually happened in that fateful water disaster. Apparently, the subject was extremely serious, as the assassin's gaze darkens while she prepares to relive the memories of the tragedy. In a terrifying vision of the past, a giant demonic eye tears through the heavens as red lightning destroys the concrete structure. Hordes of abyssal creatures emerge from the murky waters, led by a macabre clown wielding a blood-stained chainsaw. Amid the absolute chaos, the relentless silhouette of Su Xiaomei appears, tearing through the monsters with destructive blows to protect her creator. Shocked by the visual revelation, Zhao Fan concludes that the clown and the other demons are also villains who have escaped from their own stories. Affectionately, she caresses the young man's face and states that she would never let her great love fall at the hands of those grotesque anomalies. Analyzing his own personality, the young man understands that, faced with certain doom, his survival instinct summoned his most powerful creation. Intrigued by the gaps in the narrative, he asks why she wasn't by his side when he woke up trapped in the illusion of that sinister house. Annoyed by his suspicion, the villainess pouts and warns that a kiss won't always be enough to resolve doubts about her feelings. Promptly, the boy holds the young woman's face and states that he trusts her, deducing that she used the ghost house as a protective shield. Mentally, the protagonist realizes that he himself had planned that trap before losing his memory to ensure his safety. In the fragmented memories, the girl appears supporting his bloody body, raising the question of why she abandoned him afterward. Trembling with dread as she recalls the events, the assassin confesses that she was forced to flee because a much more frightening entity began to pursue her. Startled to see genuine fear on the face of his most insane creation, the young man questions who could possibly intimidate her like that. Completely vulnerable, she admits she doesn't know the monster's identity, but that its mere presence nearly suffocated her with an overwhelming pressure. Unable to fight while carrying the unconscious body of her love, the girl was forced to hide him in the most isolated ghost domain she could find. With a heavy expression after hearing the truth, Zhao Fan stands up and concludes that this mysterious anomaly is far above the level of common demons. Under the memory of thousands of eyes lurking in the shadows, the villainess describes that the creature's energy was so chilling it felt like it could freeze the very soul. Piecing together the few clues he has at that moment, the author suspects that this unknown being might be the main source behind all the chaos. All the pieces start to fall into place in his mind, from the sudden explosion of the dam to the invasion of nefarious creatures into the real world. Surprised by the young man's absurd theory, Xiaomei cautiously questions if that terrifying entity could be the true creator of them all. Staring at his own glowing hands, he dismisses the idea of a creator god, but is certain that facing the monster now would be absolute suicide. Determined to fight for his own survival, the young man clenches his fist tightly as the cursed mark on his skin begins to pulse intensely again. Turning toward the illuminated window, he states that he needs to recover his erased memories to find that unknown enemy's fatal weakness. Soon, a pertinent doubt arises in his mind, making him wonder if the monster erased his mind out of sheer fear of the author's own privileged knowledge. Trusting his old artistic instincts, Zhao Fan is absolutely certain that the final creature also came from one of his lost drafts. Willing to follow her great love's orders, the pink, haired girl stands up calmly and asks what their next move will be. Without hesitation, the protagonist decrees that they must hunt the demonic clown, as that villain awakened first and must possess the crucial answers. Walking confidently toward the exit, the young man plans to rip every piece of information about the mysterious entity directly from the clown's throat. Side by side with his most lethal weapon, he recognizes that this smiling psychopath is the first key to unraveling the entire mystery surrounding them. Intrigued by the imposed mission, Xiaomi caresses her own lips and questions where they might find that specific target in such a vast world. Knowing the unbreakable rules of his own universe, the author explains that the obsession for success will force the monster to return to its original setting. Excited by the possibility of spilling even more enemy blood, the assassin tilts her head to the side and demands to know the exact location of the lair. With a predatory gaze fixed on the horizon, the young man reveals that the villain is at the Circus of Truth and promises that he will regain control of his own life at any cost. Threateningly cutting through the darkness, the sinister circus tents rise on top of the hill under the macabre illumination of a huge blood moon. Without hesitating in the face of imminent danger, the couple steps through a distorted portal that transports them directly to the flesh-eating clown's domain. Inside the main arena, a terrified audience watches the barbarity as their bodies are mercilessly bathed in the fresh blood of the victims. As soon as they step firmly into the venue, the two stare at the wooden stage where the horror attraction is about to reach its most disturbing climax. In the exact center of the blood-soaked ring, the demonic clown displays his newest victim, mercilessly tied to a spinning wheel of torture. With a grotesque smile tearing across his face and his eyes shining with pure malice, the anomaly opens his arms theatrically and welcomes them to his deadly show. Carried away by his own sick madness, the psychopath hurls sharp blades at the moving target with sadistic and extremely cruel precision. Each piece of metal violently embeds itself in the wood around the hostage, provoking muffled screams of despair that echo through the cursed circus tents. Completely corrupted by the place's dark energy, one of the spectators laughs hysterically, his own face stained with the scarlet splatters from the attraction. Dominated by the villain's illusory spell, the disturbed audience gives a standing ovation to the suffering of others, as if they were witnessing the greatest work of art ever created. Taking an exaggerated and mocking bow, the master of ceremonies announces that the next trick will consist of splitting a living human being exactly in half. With a deafening mechanical roar, he starts the engine of a huge, red-stained chainsaw, sending sparks and terror to every corner of the stage. Pointing the deadly machine towards the stands, the monster asks in a tone of pure mockery who the brave volunteer will be for the final act. Immediately, the spell of collective euphoria breaks, and the audience panics, frantically shrinking in their seats to avoid eye contact. Frustrated by the sudden cowardice of these mere mortals, the clown's expression soars, and he mutters in disgust at the lack of participants to enhance his show. Breaking the tense silence that had fallen over the arena, Zhou Fan raises his arm in the middle of the crowd and offers himself as a volunteer with a defiant smile on his face. In that same dramatic instant, a blinding spotlight illuminates the protagonist and his lethal companion, instantly drawing the hungry attention of the ringmaster. Recognizing the couple who survived the explosion at the dam, the demon celebrates manically at the perfect opportunity to finish the job. Fearing for his safety, Xiaomi tries to step forward to face the imminent battle. The villain brandishes his blood-stained chainsaw, excited for the chance to tear the young man to shreds and consume him alive. However, Zhou Fan just stares at him with a cold gaze, holding the enormous, newly summoned weapon that seems to exude a deadly aura. Shocked by the sight, the psychopath takes a step back and immediately recognizes the black chainsaw in the boy's hands. After all, this is the exact same saw he had given to the bride in the stands, as a macabre gift. From the shadows, the tied-up woman murmurs in relief for the clown not to be too surprised, assuring him that the gentleman would be torn to pieces shortly. The young man's lethal companion, holding the blood-soaked bouquet, watches the scene with a disturbing smile on her face. Faced with the imminent danger, the villain revs his chainsaw with a sharp movement, preparing for a brutal combat. Without losing his ironic tone, the young man points to the enemy's equipment and provocatively asks if that's just a magic trick. In his mind, the protagonist knows that this monster's abilities are extremely limited, based only on creating clones. This memory is accompanied by old images from his own manga, where the villain used illusion boxes to deceive his prey. Suddenly, the blade of the enormous chainsaw lunges at the young man, revealing the hidden panic in the enemy's eyes. In response, the author dodges the attack with extreme ease, showing that he is not the least bit impressed by the assault. Mocking the other's desperation, Zhou Fan warns the villain that he will soon understand what it truly means to be ripped in half. With a confident smile, he pulls the trigger of his black weapon, and an overwhelming power takes over the scene. The saw begins to spin furiously, emitting a deafening roar as he raises the weapon, ready for the counterattack. In the blink of an eye, the clown tries to attack head-on, but the protagonist's blade blocks the assault and sends him flying. Celebrating the superiority of the stolen equipment, Zhao Fan ironically thanks his adversary for the welcoming gift. Desperate at the inferiority of his own power, the monster screams that he can't use a weapon of that caliber. Seizing the opportunity, the young man reveals that he will use the accumulated energy of that black blade to cut him in half. Cornered, the psychopath holds out his hand, trying to negotiate and begging for the master not to end him right there. Pathetically kneeling, he admits his mistake and assures that he will not act against his own creator again. Without showing any emotional reaction, the protagonist lowers his guard for a second and orders him to explain everything about the damn incident. Trembling and covered in a cold sweat, the clown immediately agrees, stating that he will reveal every detail if his life is spared. However, as soon as Zhao Fan leans in slightly, the villain reveals his true colors and cowardly stabs the boy in the back. The demon lets out a hysterical laugh, claiming the boy was too naive to trust his cheap promises. But the stabbed body suddenly explodes into a dense mist of black spectral power, completely shocking the assassin. The clown soon realizes he was tricked by his own ability, but it's too late for regrets. The real author emerges through the mirror, with a vengeful gleam in his eyes, and the chainsaw raised. Amid pure desperation, Xiami screams to warn the protagonist, pointing out the real villain who is trying to sneak away. The terrified demon leaps over the stands, activating all the illusion traps as he enters the chamber of mirrors. In a quick response, the young man pulls the chainsaw's trigger, and it transforms into a deadly vortex of dark chains that tears through the barrier. The impact is so great that all the circus's illusion equipment begins to explode into pieces around the ring. With the path cleared, he taunts the demon, saying he should have used more ropes when trying to ambush him. Xiamai, however, remains motionless on the stage, just watching the smoke dissipate with a frightening tranquility. Suddenly, Zhao Fan spots a figure running towards him amidst the debris scattered across the arena. The one approaching is just a member of the audience, overcome with hysteria amid the destruction and terror. With the entire circus transformed into absolute chaos, the panicked audience tries to escape by trampling one another. Seizing the opportunity, the original clown camouflages himself among the crowd to flee. The young man temporarily lowers the saw in laments, stating that the clown took advantage of the screaming to escape like a coward. Frustrated, he confesses that his 3-second freezing ability is useless at such a long and chaotic distance. Noticing the civilians' commotion, Xiamei quickly uses her lethal red ribbons, stopping the advance of the desperate people. He admits to her that he didn't foresee the anomaly could become so skilled in illusion after breaking the original rules. Despite the temporary setback, Zhao Fan revs the blade once more, showing absolute confidence in his tracking tool. The chainsaw begins to emit a strong black glow as he confirms that the weapon's negative energy will guide them by the scent of decay. He warns his companion to be careful, as any distraction now could lead them directly into another enemy trap. Surprisingly, the weapon absorbs the negative trace and instantly retracts into the palm of the young man's right hand. The black metal sinks into his skin, etching a glowing mark as his wrist radiates with the channeled ghostly power. Zhao Fan analyzes the burning symbol and smiles, impressed by the idea that the weapon recognized his absolute command. Behind him, Xiamei caresses her own neck and proposes cutting off her master's fingers to adorn her throat with a special necklace. Horrified by the assassin's sadistic romanticism, he quickly pulls his hand back and tries to dissuade her from that terrible idea. But the black ring on his index finger already begins to pulse, pulling his arm forcefully toward the fleeing prey's hiding spot. Under the illumination of a giant, mist-stained red moon, the couple appears in front of a sinister 4-story inn. According to the intense reaction of the newly forged magic ring, the cursed clown must be recovering from his injuries right there. Cautious and observant, Zhao Fan comments that nothing about this inn was in his old art, indicating something outside the laws of his manga. The girl suggests that, since the first promise was made at the dam, the answer to this enigma might be close to revealing itself. As soon as they pass through the main doors of the dark inn, the place's deadly aura weighs heavily on the intruder's shoulders. Just then, a sudden crash of breaking furniture echoes through the deserted corridors, immediately heightening both of their senses of alert. Next to the destroyed entrance, a ghostly figure says with a deep voice that the young guests must be there to find a safe room. A fat man, sweating profusely, tries to ignore the supernatural disturbances while focusing his attention on the real customers leaning against the dark counter. Aware of the illusion, the protagonist calmly leans on the reception desk and states that he and his girlfriend just want to take a peek around. Without hesitation, he asks directly which room their friend, dressed as a clown who works at the circus, decided to stay in. The chubby man stammers uncontrollably upon hearing the question, fearing the consequences of revealing the identity of a monstrous creature, until an elegant and pale man appears from behind the receptionist. coldly declaring that guest records are highly confidential. The hotel manager stretches a wide smile, observing the new prey and offering help, faking a false cordiality to mask his evil. Mockingly, the man invites the couple to pack their bags calmly if they want to come down to the main floor, instead of snooping around in the shadows. Terrified, the receptionist just trembles in fear as his boss's long finger points directly to the upper floor of the inn. Slowly climbing the stairs, the obese man laments his own luck of being trapped there, serving as a guide under the constant surveillance of the anomalies. Guiding the couple to the third floor, the reluctant employee walks carefully so as not to awaken the atrocities sleeping in the adjacent hallways. Aware of the imminent danger at every corner, Zhao Fan comments that the owner of this sinister facility definitely seems to be in trouble. His lethal girlfriend coldly agrees and just adjusts her blood-stained dress, maintaining the posture that she's about to take off some heads right there. They finally reach the end of the dimly lit hallway, and the chubby man stammers, pointing to the heavy wooden door with the number 303. The young receptionist backs away while muttering to the heavens about the unspeakable horrors of seeing human souls in constant decay inside. Taking the key from the young man's trembling hands, the author asks in a challenging tone if he's that afraid of seeing the crushed insides there. Xiaomi steps forward, revealing the bloody room while smiling innocently, and jokes, asking if anyone else was done in there last night. Completely confused and frightened, the employee waves his hands desperately, trying to explain the rules for cleaning up the bodies in that cursed place. Inside the dimly lit hallway of the sinister inn, the tension reaches an unbearable point between the intruders and the fake employee. The receptionist questions if the couple is joking. Overcome with nervousness, the fat man lists the place's oddities, mentioning a deceased boss and a terrifying energy everywhere, until his expression darkens with sudden suspicion, demanding to know how the outsider obtained so much classified information. In an extremely fast move, Zhao Fan snatches the gun from the man's waist, telling him to calm down and stating he's just curious how a normal human survived there. Immediately, the young man invokes his dark power and traps the adversary's head with red tendrils, ordering the chubby man to explain himself at once. Desperate from the frightening magic, the employee pulls out a secondary weapon and accuses the pair of being disguised demons. Without hesitation, he pulls the trigger towards the protagonist's face, firing a lethal shot at point-blank range. Zhao Fan dodges the bullet with a slight tilt of his neck, displaying a cold and completely focused gaze on the combat. In response to the aggression, the author concentrates the macabre energy in his hand and delivers a devastating punch directly to the shooter's stomach. The brutal impact sends the fat man flying backward, causing him to fall to his knees while vomiting on the floor from the excruciating pain. Xiaomei emerges from the shadows with a threatening glint in her eyes, ready to finish off the defenseless prey. With frightening agility, the assassin violently stumps on the fallen man's back, crushing him against the floor and telling him to behave. Aware of the enemy's total submission, the protagonist points the revolver at his head and demands to know his true identity. Bathed in sweat and tears, the chubby man begs to be put out of his misery, accusing the couple of planning a sick torture session. Amused by the other's desperation, Zhao Fan casually raises the pistol and questions who had claimed they were monsters. With an ironic tone about the enemy's pathetic deduction, the young man asks if the macabre aura makes him a monster, and if that would make the weapon a cursed object. Even crushed on the floor, the employee retorts with indignation, firmly stating that the revolver has no curse whatsoever. He quickly explains that the equipment was provided by the Bureau of Anomalies, designed specifically to take down supernatural creatures. Finally, the chubby man processes the situation and understands that the pair are not demons, drawing a smile of approval from Zhao Fan. Just then, Xiaomi approaches with a predatory look, lithely warning that if they were real monsters, not even dust of him would be left there. Aware of the threat, the man realizes the demonic girl is terribly dangerous and decides to reveal everything to save his own skin. Completely surrendered to fear, he agrees to tell the whole truth as long as they release him from that crushing pressure. To prove his words, the prisoner displays his military ID, revealing his name to be Wang Shun, a special agent against dark entities. With no way out, the agent confesses he infiltrated the inn to investigate bizarre passings, but ended up trapped in that nightmare for 3 whole days. Checking the badge carefully, the author is surprised by the existence of an official organization for combating anomalies. Getting straight to the point, the young man asks if the agent ever saw a clown-like monster roaming the premises. Overcome with dread, Wang reports that he found no useful clues, only that the local haunting demands the sacrifice of 1 human life per night. Based on the information, Zhao Fan soon deduces that the circus villain must be directly linked to the recurring massacres in that building. Shortly after, the protagonist questions how the entity chooses its daily victims, and the agent reveals that the recent deceased had answered voices at their room doors. That's when a shrill scream from downstairs broke the silence, demanding that the fat guy bring hot water to room 201. With no option to refuse, the spy gets into character and promptly responds to the dark call that echoed up the stairs. Before leaving, Wang assures them he hasn't seen the cursed clown but points out that there is an individual inside capable of tracking any guest. Interested in the vital clue, the white-haired young man quickly deduces that the mentioned contact is the facility's manager himself. Even while confirming the suspicion, the agent advises the couple not to confront the boss now, warning them never to open the door after midnight. With a forced, sheepish smile, the chubby man says goodbye, asking that if they hear desperate screams, they try to save him from his imminent end. When the man turns his back to fulfill his suicidal role, Zhao Fan tells him to wait and throws the silver pistol back to him. Surprised by the unexpected gesture, the assassin questions why he would return a dangerous weapon to someone who tried to kill them minutes before. Calmly, the protagonist explains that the Bureau of Anomalies could be a crucial ally in the future, making that favor a very valuable bargaining chip. Outside the cursed property, the darkness of the night is torn by reddish lightning that illuminates the terrifying facade. Inside the gloomy premises, the couple waits patiently as the shadows lengthen unnaturally across the worn floorboards. With his eyes fixed on the thick darkness through the broken window, the young man asks if his lethal companion has already identified the type of local threat. Relentlessly, the hands of the old wall clock advance in silence, marking the countdown to the start of the inevitable slaughter. Just then, a thick drop of dark blood plummets from the invisible ceiling, hitting the floor with a dull, ominous thud. Ringing through the hallway, the ghostly chimes announce the arrival of midnight, plunging the inn's corridors into a sepulchral chill of pure tension. Recalling the rules of survival in his mind, Zhao Fan prepares for the worst, aware that the deadly hunting game has just begun. Faced with the abrupt change in the environment's spiritual pressure, the young man alerts his girlfriend that an unknown entity is approaching. Seconds after the warning, dry rhythmic knocks echo against the heavy wooden door, breaking the room's deadly silence. Beaming, Xiami's sadistic smile appears as she mocks the monster's stupidity for offering itself as prey in the first few minutes of the game. Despite the spy's survival warning, the protagonist places his cold hand directly on the entrance's doorknob. With an analytical gaze, he murmurs that the information collected by the government agency's agent was accurate and deadly. Excited by the imminent possibility of carnage, the assassin can't contain the disturbing laughter that escapes her lips. On the other side of the door, a trembling female voice begs for medical help, claiming her boyfriend is very ill in the next room. Without showing a hint of fear, Zhao Fan throws the door open to confront the mystery that awaited in the hallway's darkness. A desperate woman in sleepwear appears crying on the doorstep, begging for help with her partner's uncontrollable convulsions. Perfect in the role of a supportive couple, Xiame holds her master's arm and sweetly suggests they help their neighbor. To draw the evil into the light, the young man cordially agrees, stating that outsiders should always support each other on difficult journeys. Upon entering room 302, they find a man foaming at the mouth with his eyes completely rolled back. At that moment, the sick man's body thrashes violently against the bedsheets, and the author asks how long this bizarre episode had been going on. Near the edge of the mattress, the young man cautiously extends his hand to examine the tensed arms of the individual in agony. Focused on the spasmodic tremors, the protagonist throws a clinical bait into the conversation, suggesting it might be a severe epileptic seizure. With the demeanor of a cold investigator, Zhao Fan asks the distressed woman if the patient had any medical history of nervous diseases. Unexpectedly, the convulsing man stops trembling and breaks into a monstrous and sadistic smile that tears across his face from ear to ear. Overcome by a supernatural force, the cursed patient leaps from the bed like a wild animal, aiming for the protagonist's unprotected back. Before the cowardly attack could hit its target, Xiami's silver blade cut through the air in a lethal arc, intercepting the monster in mid-flight. With fresh blood dripping from her carving knife, the pink-haired girl celebrates the ambush with a genuine psychopath's smile. At the same time, Zhao Fan activates his dark tendrils without looking back, completely immobilizing the furious assault of the male anomaly. Frustrated by the plan's failure, the supposed crying girlfriend reveals her demonic form and tries to attack the assassin, but receives a brutal slash in response. Under the crushing pressure of the macabre energy on his neck, the young author demands to know the name of the master who sent them into that useless trap. Soon, the monster woman screams in agony as the Yandere's knife mercilessly tears through her chest, bathing the room in a sea of dark, rotten blood. Aware of the crushing defeat, the female creature screams that the mission has failed and desperately tries to crawl toward the hallway to escape. But mercy doesn't exist in Xiami's vocabulary. She plunges her weapon directly into the fugitive's neck, ending the haunting's life instantly. Cornered, the man's face begins to swell grotesquely with disgusting pustules, laughing hysterically that the intruders will also perish that night. With a wet, disgusting pop, the fake guest's body explodes like a flesh bomb, sending shards of viscera all over the walls. Disgust and terror define the bloody goo covering the floor in a scene worthy of an absolute nightmare, slowly evaporating into a toxic, reddish fog. After cleaning the filth off his clothes, the young man deduces that the true demon of the inn uses bodily fluids to control everything and everyone in the building. Amid the blood-stained room, Xiaofan questions his lethal companion about what kind of demon truly inhabits this sinister inn. He observes that the fake couple was already gone long before the attack. The hidden master used these puppets only to test the intruder's abilities. With a mischievous smile, Xiaomi presses the young man against the wall and comments that the enemy is clever but warns that this hunt is tiring out her beauty. The author pieces things together and deduces that this enclosed space is ideal for a being that controls the deceased and carries out timed assassinations. He then hypothesizes that the big villain of the place is the Leaping Demon, another of the cruel characters from his own drawings. The Yandere assassin agrees with the theory. She remembers that the chubby agent investigated for 3 days without finding anything, precisely because he didn't know the original story. Zhao Fan notes that the clown demon still hasn't appeared. He suspects the coward is hiding in an empty room, waiting for the perfect moment for an ambush. But the deadly tension of the environment doesn't affect Xiaomei one bit. She approaches with a flushed face, completely focused on her beloved's lips. She whispers with a sweet and seductive voice, claiming to know that he wants to kiss her in that exact moment of intimacy. Unable to resist the dangerous charm of his creation, the young man gives in to desire and seals the girl's lips in an intense kiss. The romantic atmosphere dominates the room for a few moments, bizarrely contrasting with the mortal remains scattered on the floor. However, his sense of danger speaks louder. The author gently pulls the young woman's face away, asking her to wait until the situation at the inn is resolved. A heavy, dry knock suddenly echoes on the door, abruptly interrupting the couple's moment. Frustrated by the constant interruptions, Zhao Fan sighs and laments that his alone time with Su Xiaomei has ended once again. He protectively hugs his girlfriend, and with a cold gaze directed at the hallway, orders her to go open the door for the new visitor. Worried about his girlfriend's explosive reaction, Zhao Fan quietly asks if she's okay with the sudden interruption. Surprisingly, the assassin maintains a sweet smile and shows no fury, an attitude that gives the young man a complete case of the creeps. Outside the room, a group of apprehensive guests huddles in the dark hallway, all with exhausted and frightened expressions. A middle-aged man introduces himself as Li Han and asks with a trembling voice if the couple heard the terrifying screams from moments ago. Aware that the inn's master is using human wave tactics to tire them out, the author decides to play along and feign ignorance. He adopts a confused posture and confirms that the neighbors suddenly went crazy before falling silent for good. The residents panic at the confirmation. They murmur that the inn hasn't been safe for a long time and fear who will be the next victim. Zhao Fan points to the window at the end of the hall, indicating that the crazy guests simply jumped to their demise. The news hits the civilians like a bomb. Li Han grabs his own head in despair, crying as he imagines his little daughter might have jumped too. The collective panic escalates, and the neighbors start shouting for no one to talk too much, at the risk of being the next to go. An old lady leaning on a cane despairs. She laments that such young children are wasting their lives in such a horrible way. Feigning pure terror, Xiaomi shrinks into her boyfriend's arms and cries, saying the situation is terrifying and she can't stand to be there any longer. The young man strokes her hair to calm her, assuring her in a loud voice that nothing bad will happen as long as he's around. In the midst of the confusion, the macabre silhouette of the clown demon appears in the shadows at the end of the hallway, observing the chaos he helped create. As the crowd disperses in fear, the couple realizes that the real trap is just beginning to close in around them. Suddenly, the shrill sound of the room's phone shatters the tension. The author answers promptly, hearing a desperate voice on the other end of the line. The chubby agent begs for immediate help, tearfully warning that he has been captured and tied up in the inn's dark basement. With a firm gaze, Zhao Fan informs the remaining guests that it's the receptionist's voice, warning that something terrible has happened to him. Determined to cash in the favor, he announces that he knows the way and will go down immediately to rescue the man in danger. Xiaomi holds her beloved's hands and adopts a fragile demeanor. She claims the basement is too dangerous and that she doesn't have the courage to accompany him. The young man holds her face affectionately. He asks her to stay upstairs and wait for his quick return, so she doesn't put herself at risk. The assassin perfectly plays the role of the helpless damsel. She kisses the young man's hands with teary eyes, pleading for him not to take too long. Addressing the old lady, Zhao Fan explains that his wife is very shy and asks the grandma to look after her during his absence in the basement. The elderly woman shows a warm smile and holds the girl's arm. She assures the young man that she will protect the girl with her own life if necessary. With the situation under control, the protagonist turns and runs towards the stairs. closely followed by 2 other men from the search party. Alone with the residents, Xiaomi waves sweetly at her departing boyfriend, keeping up the act of a fragile and worried wife. As soon as the double doors of the hallway slam shut, the atmosphere changes. The old lady gently leads the girl through the dark corridors. A cold, cutting wind invades the broken building, making Xiaomi let out a stage squeal and huddle in fear near the old lady's cane. The grandma asks with a sweet voice if the wind scared her. She explains that this hallway attracts the bad luck of the recent suicides. To ensure the young woman's safety, the lady invites her into room 203, promising a warm refuge from the evil wind. The elderly woman leads the pink-haired young woman very carefully down the slippery steps, always warning her not to trip in the dark. Far away, the man named Li Han trembles with dread as he realizes that little Yun couldn't have jumped alone from the top of that cursed building. He concludes in despair that he was looking in the wrong place. But a cold hand violently covers his mouth before he can scream for help. A macabre figure with a psychopathic smile emerges from the shadows behind the distressed father, demanding absolute silence with a finger to its lips. Back on the safe floor, the heavy door of room 203 closes with a funereal creak, isolating Xiaomi and the grandma from the rest of the world. The lady walks slowly to the small coffee table, where a steaming kettle and 2 old cups were already prepared for tea. With a disturbing friendliness, the old woman serves the hot water and offers the cup to the girl, asking her to drink it to calm her shaken nerves. The assassin thanks her for the kindness with a sweet and innocent voice, bringing the mysterious liquid to her lips without showing the slightest hesitation. As soon as she swallows the drink, the Yandere's eyes gleam with pure insanity. She immediately recognizes the unmistakable taste of poison in the water. With a lethal smile, she thinks to herself that this pathetic dose wouldn't be enough to make her sleep for even 2 minutes. In the damp depths of the basement, Zhou Fan finally finds the isolated room, kicking the rotten wooden door open with brutal force. The chubby agent is thrown in a dark corner, completely tied with thick ropes and gagged with a dirty cloth. Upon seeing the rescue, Wang thrashes hysterically and makes muffled sounds, desperately trying to warn the young man of the imminent danger. The young man sighs in relief at finding the bait alive. He jokes, saying he finally found a group willing to use him as a human sacrifice. Ignoring the warnings of danger, the author tells the prisoner to stay calm and approaches to untee him, asking if there are any accomplices nearby. Behind the protagonist, the 2 men who volunteered to help with the search exchange furtive glances and malicious smiles of pure betrayal. The tied-up agent's eyes widen in panic. He squirms frantically on the floor, trying to warn that those men are the demon's henchmen. Unsuspecting of the ambush, Zhao Fan calmly comments that he heard a rumor about a hidden secret at the bottom of that basement. The atmosphere becomes deadly heavy. The 2 assassins draw sharp blades in complete silence, ready to slice the young man's unprotected back. One of the aggressors raises his cleaver and charges with a furious scream, believing the outsider would be the perfect sacrifice for that bloody night. In an absolute reflex, the young author spins his body quickly. He avoids the lethal stab by a fraction of a second, showing he was already expecting the attack. The enemy's weapon cuts only empty air, and the traitor's face contorts in shock upon realizing the victim had anticipated the cowardice. Mocking the useless effort, Zhao Fan raises his right hand. He coldly questions if that pathetic attack was the only trick they had. Instantly, tendrils of black energy shoot from the boy's wrist, piercing the aggressor's stomach with frightening brutality. Blood splatters across the basement as the magic consumes the man's life force, reducing his robust body to a desiccated skeleton in seconds. Witnessing the instant and horrifying demise of his partner, the second assassin completely loses his sanity and flees, running up the stairs. Cold as ice, the protagonist focuses his gaze on the fugitive's back. He warns in a threatening tone that the traitor's turn has come and orders him not to run. A new wave of red and black tentacles is fired, crossing the hallway's distance like spears in search of the desperate target. The tethers of dark energy grab the fleeing man's leg. He lets out a terrifying scream as he is violently pulled backward. The spiritual blade tears through the last aggressor's body without mercy, ensuring the basement floor is covered with the remains of the failed ambush. Overcome by a dark fury, the fake hostage screams that the boy shouldn't claim victory just for killing 2 useless pawns. Promising to turn that basement into a mass grave, the aggressor advances toward Zhao Fan with his hands enveloped in a murderous aura. Without showing a hint of fear, the author maintains his cold posture as a sudden gunshot tears through the air of the enclosed space. The chubby agent finally springs into action, landing a direct shot that brutally throws the criminal's body against the stone wall. Kicking down the warehouse door with a powerful kick, the spy smiles confidently and announces his arrival to help his new combat partner. Walking over the rubble, Wang Shunan raises his smoking gun and celebrates the success of the surprise attack with pure enthusiasm. Impressed by the quick recovery, the protagonist notes that his ally managed to free himself from the ropes and retrieve his equipment. But the relief is short-lived in that cursed place. the fallen enemy rises from the rubble with a maniacal smile and a distorted face. Bathed in blood, the monster reveals that killing one or two makes no difference, as all intruders will meet their end there anyway. Mocking the firearm, the adversary warns that half-demons have accelerated regeneration, making normal bullets completely useless. Before the monster could advance, Zhao Fan summons the black chainsaw into his hands, releasing an overwhelming energy throughout the room. Desperate, the government agent screams for help upon realizing his special revolver does no damage to the creature's skin. Ignoring his allies' panic, the master wields the toothed blade and delivers a devastating vertical blow directly to the center of the target. With a wet thud of tearing flesh, the chainsaw splits the demon's body exactly in half, spewing a fountain of dark blood. The enemy's cry of agony echoes through the basement walls before being silenced forever under the faint light of the swinging bulb. After the heat of the brutal combat, the chubby agent touches his own face and complains that his good looks were almost ruined by the monster. Quickly changing his tone, he praises Zhao Fan's insane skills and swears absolute loyalty, even calling him Dad. With the chainsaw still humming softly, the young man ignores the flattery and directly questions what the spy discovered during his 3 days of infiltration. With no way out, Wang admits that the Bureau heard dark rumors about the inn being a front for a large human trafficking ring. Disgusted by the lack of evidence, the author raises a macabre question about what the tragic fate of the children, who couldn't be sold, would be. Guided by this dark line of reasoning, the young man advances down the dark corridor and uses his motorized weapon to shred a heavy metal door. Sparks fly as the steel is mercilessly torn, revealing the entrance to a hidden warehouse in the depths of that basement. As they take their first step inside the secret room, the pair freezes in horror at an indescribable and revolting scene. Piles of decayed children's bodies and tiny skeletons cover the concrete floor, forming a mountain of pure human cruelty. Shocked by such an atrocity, the government agent covers his face in disgust and curses those responsible, calling them despicable animals. Overcome by a silent sadness, the protagonist kneels near the mortal remains and lightly touches the torn dress of a small skeleton. The contact with that familiar fabric triggers a painful memory in his mind, transporting him to a warm and distant past. In the old memories, the artist sees himself sitting at a book signing, receiving the admiring affection of his little fans. A smiling little girl hands a hand-drawn picture to her idol, saying she's eagerly awaiting his next works. The author perfectly recalls signing a copy of his book for that dedicated fan, who was wearing the exact same dress found in the basement. Back in the nefarious reality of the basement, the face of the desperate father they met upstairs appears in the protagonist's mind. Zhao Fan finally connects all the pieces of the puzzle and understands that Mir Lahan is the father of little Xiaoyan, the owner of the blood-stained dress. Smoke of pure hatred begins to emanate from the author's body, who clenches his fists upon realizing that the traffickers didn't even spare an 8-year-old child. This dark feeling reaches critical levels in his chest, causing a crushing, murderous aura to take over the entire underground environment. Far away in the isolation of room 203, the pink-haired young woman rests peacefully on the bed, pretending to be in a deep sleep. The gentle-looking old lady now displays a face twisted by evil, observing the sleeping girl alongside her accomplices. In the shadows of her own mind, Siamei just smiles mischievously, patiently awaiting her beloved's return while deceiving everyone. Stroking her own hair, the elderly entity comments to the other men that the outsider's demise downstairs was already an absolute certainty. Convinced that the young author was torn to shreds by the leaping demon, the old woman decrees that sacrificing such a pretty girl would be a tremendous waste. One of the suited criminals interrupts the nefarious rambling, warning that dawn will soon break, and they need to get rid of the evidence as quickly as possible. Agreeing with the urgency of the situation, the gang's leader orders the henchman to go down to the warehouse to start a fire immediately. In a calculating tone, she instructs the man to burn everything and, if the fat receptionist is still alive, to get him out of there before he turns to ash. The subordinate confirms the order in silence and leaves the room in a hurry, walking through the dark corridors towards the stage of the massacre. As soon as the door closes again, the old woman turns her perverse attention back to the prey lying down, planning how to extract the maximum suffering from her. Meanwhile, the muffled hum of the ventilation system carries the tension in the air, announcing that the inevitable clash between the two groups is about to explode. Smelling a strong odor impregnating the confined air of the basement, the author lifts his face and warns that the enemies are spreading kerosene to burn everything. Determined to preserve the evidence of that cowardly massacre, he orders the agent to gather all the children's mortal remains immediately. Without question, Wang Shunan pulls a glowing blue device from his pocket, activating a dimensional storage box from the Bureau of Anomalies. The cybernetic portal sucks the delicate skeletons into a safe space, ensuring those little souls will finally have a dignified rest. Suddenly, a flaming torch is thrown through the crack in the metal door, hitting the pool of fuel spread across the room's floor. A deafening explosion engulfs the environment in orange flames, destroying any physical trace that still remained in the crime scene. However, heavy footsteps echo amidst the fiery hell. The protagonist emerges from the flames unscathed, his eyes glowing with pure murderous fury. Swearing he will make the culprits pay with their own lives, the young man advances through the smoky corridors with the chainsaw roaring in his hands. Sensing the imminent threat, a horde of henchmen armed with pieces of pipe and knives rushes down the stairs to intercept the pair. Screaming that they need more sacrifices to survive that cursed night, the traffickers charge at the intruder in a completely irrational manner. But the power difference is colossal. Zhao Fan swings his motorized weapon in a deadly arc, tearing through the front line with no effort at all. The black metal rips through flesh and bone as easily as it cuts paper, sending gallons of blood pouring down the steps of the dark inn. Bodies are split in half as screams of despair echo through the staircase, proving that a quick end would be too kind of fate for this human trash. Far from the carnage, in the comfort of room 203, one of the survivors panics and reports that normal weapons do no damage to the intruder. Overcome with hatred and shock, the old lady curses her subordinates as useless, realizing the prey they underestimated has become the true predator of the night. Sweating coldly at the absolute failure, the old lady grumbles that the night of soul summoning is almost over, and they urgently need fresh blood. Admitting she gravely underestimated the outsider, she tries to come up with a desperate plan as the sounds of slaughter draw closer down the hall. Just then, little Xiaoyan's father bursts through the door in tears, shattering what little organization was left in the criminal gang's leadership. Aware that there's no more time to escape, the old woman orders her henchmen to lift the sleeping girl, deciding to use her as a perfect human shield. On the red-stained stairs, the terrifying sound of the motorized blade cuts down the last aggressors who tried to block the relentless Reaper's ascent. With the path clear of living obstacles, Zhao Fan steps onto the upper floor, exuding a spiritual pressure so dense it suffocates the air in the room. Cornered at the end of the hallway, the surviving criminals drag the pink-haired hostage, pointing trembling knives at her delicate skin. Shouting to hide his own dread, the man in the suit demands that the chainsaw monster stop advancing immediately, or his girlfriend will lose her head. Pressing the steel blade against Xiami's neck, the thug threatens to slit her throat without mercy at the slightest sign of movement from the protagonist. Faced with this cheap blackmail, the author just slightly lowers his weapon, fixing a cold, expressionless gaze into the eyes of the terrified kidnappers. Pretending to wake up from the poisoned trance, the Yandere assassin slowly opens her eyes, murmuring for help with a fragile and frightened voice. She dramatically shrinks into the criminal's arms, playing the role of a damsel in distress with a perfection worthy of a theater award. Tired of this prolonged act, Zhao Fan sighs deeply and seriously orders them to stop playing around once and for all. Believing the warning was for him, the kidnapper presses the knife more violently, shouting that he's not there for games and that he'll really do her in. But the message wasn't for the thugs. With the weapon against her throat, Xiami breaks into a demonic and terrifying smile, ready to start her own massacre. Displaying a purely psychopathic grin, the pink-haired girl ironically questions if the kidnappers really wanted to know how much the outsider cared about her. Zhao Fan lets out a long sigh and decides to play along with his beloved's game, stating aloud that he has much more important things to do at that moment. Without missing a beat in the sadistic theater, Xiami's expression shifts to genuine shock, asking how anything could be more important than their love. Completely lost in the middle of this couple's quarrel, the man holding the hostage demands that the author stop stalling and cut off his own hand. Tired of the pathetic demands of this worm, the Yandere assassin loses her patience and decides to take absolute control of the situation. Her threatening aura instantly paralyzes the thugs, causing the main kidnapper to question what was happening there. With a gaze filled with pure lethal madness, she stares at the terrified men, proving that the real monster was in their arms all along. Overcome by a sick passion, Xiami slides the enemy's blade up her own throat, ordering them to slowly cut her artery. She demands that the blood trickle out slowly, as the prolonged pain would break her master's heart, forcing him to confess his love for her. The sick fanaticism in the girl's eyes shocks Zhao Fan himself, who realizes just how deeply insane his creation truly is. Stunned by such madness, the old lady grabs her own cane and grumbles that these two youngsters are crazy and will ruin the whole plan. Realizing the out-of-control threat, the old woman screams for the kidnapper not to fall for the provocation and to off the hostage immediately. Driven by panic, the thug raises the knife to deliver the fatal blow, but Zhao Fan acts faster and launches a deadly attack against the group. The black chainsaw bursts through the wall of darkness with violence, embedding itself in the henchman's chest and spraying warm blood all over the hallway. With the central threat neutralized, the pink-haired girl is freed and the chaos resumes, marking the beginning of the slaughter of the remaining traffickers. Completely bathed in the dark blood of her former captor, the pink-haired girl breaks into a smile of pure maniacal insanity. Dominated by an uncontrollable bloodlust, the villainess demands the thugs repeat their threats and try to attack her one more time. Faced with the overwhelming brutality they witnessed, the fighting spirit of the surviving henchmen completely vanishes. Desperation takes over the group. The last man still alive grabs the old lady and screams for them to flee that slaughterhouse as fast as possible. Running through the blood-soaked corridors, the fugitives look back in terror and confirm that their worst nightmare has become a reality. The assassin swings her arms with lethal grace, launching whips of dark energy that tear two of the henchmen apart before they can even scream. The group leader cowardly pushes his subordinates to buy time. He begs the gods for the monster girl to stop this massacre. But mercy doesn't exist in Tsushiyami's vocabulary. With a sadistic movement, she pierces the henchman's heart, brutally splitting him in half. Contemplating the overwhelming power of his creation, the author calmly watches the bloodbath, remaining expressionless as chaos reigns supreme. With her carving knife dripping with the enemy's blood, the Yandere turns her lethal attention to the leader of the criminal gang. Amid screams of pain and breaking bones, she accuses the old lady of daring to slander her precious feelings for Zoafan. Surrounded by a circle of demonic energy and mangled corpses, Xiamai raises the fatal blade, ready to slice the mastermind of that hell. Terrified of her own imminent end, the old woman backs away until she hits the wall. She raises her stained hands and hysterically begs for the girl not to come any closer. Just as she's about to deliver the finishing blow and end the hunt, the assassin's lethal hand is firmly held by Zoafan. The young man intervenes coldly, justifying that the old woman truly deserves her fate, but she's still useful for confessing the secrets the Bureau was looking for. Pressed against the wall and terrified of her imminent end, the gang leader confesses through tears that she was involved with the trafficking network. Zhao Fan listens to the lamentations and calmly questions if she was admitting to having helped cover up the child sacrifices at the inn. With her pride shattered, the woman admits to being the true administrator of the lair, revealing that the henchmen only sold and tortured the innocents for money. Disgusted by the prisoner's cynicism, the young man holds the Yandere assassin's trembling shoulders to try to calm her relentless fury. But the hatred in Xiami's heart overflows. She refuses her beloved's clemency and says that letting the old woman live would be the same as killing her with disgust. The tension between the couple grows when the girl threatens to use her secret blades if Zhao Fan continues to protect that monster in human form. But he doesn't hesitate in his decision to spare the enemy temporarily, even under the direct threat of his most lethal companion. The young man argues that they need concrete evidence for the authorities to destroy the criminal organization for good. The girl's fury finally subsides in the face of her master's firmness. She lowers her weapons and begrudgingly accepts that he has won this tense argument. To reinforce his order, Zhao Fan sweetly strokes the villainess's head. He says in a grave voice that she must learn to obey his rules without question. Just then, the hurried sound of boots echoes up the metal stairs, accompanied by the desperate cries of Agent Shun, who finally manages to reach them. The chubby man arrives out of breath, carrying a bloody man and claiming to have found the manager tied up in one of the storage rooms during the fire, bleeding and on the verge of his end. The inn manager coughs uncontrollably and asks for forgiveness, claiming he never wanted to get involved with the clown's atrocities. The old lady, seeing the traitorous manager there, points a dirty finger and accuses him of letting his own daughter starve in an abandoned room. The terrifying revelation hits everyone like a lightning bolt, confirming that the corruption of that inn went far beyond what they imagined. Shocked by the accusations, manager Sun Deshing spits blood and defends himself. He begs the old woman to save him and insists he never willingly helped the traffickers. But the clown demon already had his own macabre plans. A dark silhouette of the entity appears behind Sun, confirming that everything was orchestrated to harvest more innocent souls. The evil shadow whispers threats of revenge and forced sacrifices, reminding him that the child's passing was essential for the circle of pain to be completed. Overwhelmed by the crushing revelations, the manager can no longer bear the weight of his own guilt and screams that he never intended to be the monster of this story. Blaming the traffickers for the tragedy, Sun reveals he was threatened. They swore to sell his little daughter if he refused to cover up the massacres. Dark memories flood the man's mind, showing the body of little Xiaoyun stretched out in the dark hallway after trying to escape alone. He cries as he confesses to watching the girl be brutally beaten by the guards, being dragged back to the dungeons without mercy, completely destroyed by his own cowardice. The manager screams with all his might that he deserved his fate for not being able to save the one he should have protected. In an unthinkable and dreadful act of desperation, he brings both hands forcefully to his own face, grabbing his bloody eyeballs. The macabre sound of tearing flesh echoes through the room. He rips out his own eyes in a hysterical and sick fit, bathing his face in a sea of pain. With his neck almost broken from the insane effort, the traitor begs for the forgiveness of those he didn't have the courage to save. In a nose-eating spectacle of self-flagellation, Unable to see anything anymore, Sun continues to tear at himself and repeatedly begs for Xiaoyun's soul to forgive him, falling to his knees on the dark, blood-soaked floor. The manager's life slips away right there, and his body tragically collapses onto the cold floor, marking the end of another victim of the clown demon. Zhao Fan observes the macabre scene with unshackable coldness. He laments Sun's cowardice, but warns that the guilt of helping criminals turned him into human trash as well. Focused on the investigation, he averts his gaze from the man's remains and points to the hallway ahead, asking who was leaking false information all along. Before any answer could be given, the old administrator is brutally sliced in half in the blink of an eye, ending her part in macabre theater. Her severed body tumbles to the bloody floor, revealing the silent fury of the pink-haired girl who didn't wait for an order from her master. Observing the old woman's corpse, the protagonist sighs and comments that now, only the leader is left to confess the atrocities committed by that whole scum. The assassin swings her dripping knife and says with a smile that there's no more need to interrogate that trash, as the real anomaly is already acting. She coldly explains that the resentful soul of the little victim has absorbed all the energy from the slaughter and has transformed into a dangerous avenging demon. The mention of the ghost entity's ascension ritual catches the chubby agent's attention, who points in terror at the blood-soaked ceiling. Like an inverted rain, the blood of the mangled victims begins to climb the inn's walls, tracing a dark path to the roof. The red footprints of a small child magically form on the cement, guiding the dark energy on a direct trail towards the top floor. Aware of the imminent danger awaiting them, Zhao Fan deduces that the leaping demon needs to reach the highest point to jump and complete its evolution. Without wasting a single second, the author once again wields his black chainsaw, with the unwavering determination to prevent the final step of the lethal sacrifice. Outside the inn, the macabre energy radiates through the floors, painting the decaying facade with the colors of evil accumulated over decades. On the terrace illuminated by the blood moon, the clown demon materializes next to Xiaoyun's lifeless body, breaking into a sadistic and repulsive smile. Mocking human emotions, the villain caresses the girl's bruised face while calling out to the terrified father crawling just behind. Surrounded by supernatural winds, the child's fragile figure floats on the edge of the precipice, completely oblivious to her own inevitable end awaiting her below. The father screams in pure despair, reaching out to save the daughter he lost to cowardice, only to watch the villain push her into the void. Atop the blood-soaked terrace, the clown demon's malignant aura pulses uncontrollably. He absorbs the fresh blood and cries out for more pain. Desperate, the father tries to charge at the monster to save the little victim. He can't bear to see his daughter taken in such a cruel way. Overcome with anguish, the man screams with all his might, demanding the anomaly stop this madness immediately. Driven by paternal instinct, Li Han runs desperately towards the edge of the building to reach the ghost girl. With tears in his eyes, he throws himself to the ground and hugs Xiaoyun's fragile silhouette, trying to protect her with his own body. However, a dark glow radiates from the child's body as the man screams in pure dread. Slowly, the girl's ethereal figure pulls away from her father's embrace, floating towards the abyss surrounded by demonic smiles. Unwilling to accept defeat, he quickly stands up and begs for Xiaoyun to wait for him. But the clown's dark dimension distorts reality, swallowing the scene with countless red and terrifying mouths. Lost in that infernal void, Li Han confesses through tears that he was the one truly responsible for ruining his daughter's life. Faced with that painful confession, the girl shows a sad smile and murmurs that she's very tired and her whole body hurts. Completely broken by those words, the man extends a trembling hand in a final, futile effort. In the blink of an eye, the child's fragile body plummets into the void, cutting through the air in a deadly dive. Pressed against the edge of the building, Li Han stares at the fatal fall in shock, his face bathed in tears. Suddenly, Zhao Fan appears and firmly grabs the man by the shoulder, ordering him not to jump from the roof under any circumstances. Trapped in the illusion, Li Han tries to break free and screams for the girl to come back. To prevent the suicide, Zhao Fan uses all his strength and pulls the man back onto the safe terrace floor. With this brutal impact, the fragments of that distorted reality begin to shatter through the air like broken glass. Grabbing the suicidal man by the collar, the author warns that jumping now would mean letting the real criminals go unpunished. Furious at the other's weakness, the protagonist throws it in the man's face that his life isn't worth wasting like this. Completely blinded by grief, the father retorts that the demon promised to bring Xiaoyun back if he jumped. Outraged by such naivety, Zhao Fan screams that giving in to that would be throwing away all the girl's true feelings. Warm memories flood the man's mind, showing all the simple, happy moments he shared with his daughter. Maintaining a firm tone, the author questions if the real Xiaoyun would want to see her father perish and become monster food. Struck by this undeniable truth, Li Han freezes as tears stream down his bruised face. However, the seductive voice from the abyss echoes again, insisting that the paternal sacrifice would bring the child back to life. Dominated once again by that evil promise, the man smiles bizarrely and agrees to trade his soul for hers. Aware of the lethal relapse, Joe Fan's eyes widen, and he screams Ali's name in an attempt to wake him from the trance. Too late for any rescue, Lehan's body plummets from the building, falling backward towards the concrete void. Without hesitating in the face of the imminent disaster, the protagonist extends his hands and invokes his power to reverse the world's gravity. Immediately, the structure of the scene completely distorts, inverting sky and earth in a vortex of crushing energy. Trapped in this altered domain, the white-haired boy manages to stabilize his own fall using the location's new physics. Acting with absolute reflexes, he pulls out his heavy black chainsaw and drives the toothed blade directly into the building's wall. Hanging by the weapon stuck in the concrete, Joe Fan extends his other arm and manages to grab the suicidal father's body in mid-air. Even saved from certain doom, the man mumbles with a vacant gaze, stating that all this rescue effort was useless. That's when the grotesque figure of the clown demon emerged from the darkness, accusing the author of blocking the path of sacrifice. Surprised by the enemy's speed, the protagonist grinds his teeth as he realizes the leaping monster had finally awakened. Without wasting time, the creature charges furiously and digs its claws into Lehan's leg, blaming the outsider for the delay. A true tug of war forms in the inverted skies, with the demon pulling the victim while laughing sadistically and cruelly. Pressured by the double weight, the young man realizes he made a mistake by not using the time freeze as soon as he reached the roof. With his fingers slipping, he regrets acting in haste and admits he needed to be much more precise with his powers. Looking at the man's hopeless face, the author feels the weight of guilt for not being able to save Xiaoyun sooner. Unable to sustain the confrontation, the monster's strength prevails and drags both humans towards the black hole in the sky. Despite the terrible situation, Joe Fan flashes a confident smile, knowing perfectly well that he wasn't going to meet his end at that moment. Like a true missile, the lethal figure of Su Xiami shoots towards her beloved to intercept the fatal fall. Overcome with absolute possession, the assassin warns with a cold gaze that no one is allowed to take her master away. Her red shoes touch the void lightly, as if she were walking on invisible platforms made of pure lethal energy. In a graceful and powerful move, the girl wraps her arms around the boy's body, instantly stopping the free fall. Supported in the Yandere's protective embrace, the protagonist sighs in relief and confirms that the rescue arrived just in the nick of time. She holds him tightly against her own chest, demonstrating a sick mixture of affection and relentless protective instinct. Aware of the still active danger, the author points his finger upwards and warns that the location's inverted gravity is already returning to normal. Just then, a colossal boom shatters the dark vortex, restoring the natural physics and sending electrical discharges across the sky. Carrying the young man princess style, Xiami floats smoothly towards the city rooftops as the chaos dissipates above. Frustrated with the loss of his prey, the clown demon grinds his blood-stained teeth, watching the pair escape unscathed. Focused on the monster from a distance, the young author points with conviction and decrees that this cursed anomaly won't escape this time. Shortly after touching the firm ground of the terrace, the two land safely, ready to reverse the disadvantage of this nighttime combat. Due to the strain of overusing his magic, the young man pants exhaustedly, his face covered in sweat and his vision slightly blurred. Worried about her great love's weakened condition, the pink-haired girl carefully studies his tired face. With ragged breaths, he smiles slightly and praises his beloved's reaction time, stating he was lucky to have her around to save him. Instantly switching to a threatening tone, the assassin warns that if he tries to throw his own life away again, she herself will be the one to end him. Suddenly, the bloody figure of the demon girl charges forward at surreal speed, demanding that everyone perish in that place. Alert to the deadly assault, Tsushiyame shoves her beloved's body aside, taking the front line of the imminent combat. With a cold and focused gaze, the assassin extends her right hand as threads of scarlet energy begin to dance between her fingers. In a lightning-fast attack, a gigantic blood spear erupts from the ground and brutally pierces the child, like Haunting's body. Impaled in the air by the lethal stake, the creature lets out a scream of absolute agony as its physical form begins to be torn apart. This brutal punishment generates a wave of red whips that spread across the scene, striking everything within a radius of several meters. During the chaos, a tactical agent appears, firing desperately at the monster's silhouette as it tried to regenerate on the ground. With his finger locked on the trigger, the soldier screams for the nefarious entity to immediately return to its original host. Continuous shots illuminate the terrace's darkness, but the anomaly refuses the order and continues to writhe in a sea of dark blood. Irritated by the useless interference, the pink-haired girl rudely orders the shooter to get out of there as quickly as possible. With a violent swing of her arm, the villainess fires a dark blast that pushes the demon's essence away from the human combatants. Bound by crimson energy tethers, the ghost girl thrashes furiously against the spiritual ropes that cut her cold skin. With black eyes overflowing with hatred, the entity warns that it won't let anyone leave and swears it will escape this magical prison. Without showing a hint of fear, Xiaomi gets close to the creature's face and scoffs, inviting the monster to try its luck against her. With a sadistic smile of pure madness, the assassin decrees that if she can't tear it to shreds, she'll simply blow it into 1,000 pieces right there. Atop the blood-soaked terrace, the clown demon's malignant aura pulses uncontrollably. He absorbs the fresh blood and cries out for more pain. Desperate, the father tries to charge at the monster to save the little victim. He can't bear to see his daughter taken in such a cruel way. Overcome with anguish, the man screams with all his might, demanding the anomaly stop this madness immediately. Driven by paternal instinct, Li Han runs desperately towards the edge of the building to reach the ghost girl. With tears in his eyes, he throws himself to the ground and hugs Xiaoyan's fragile silhouette, trying to protect her with his own body. However, a dark glow radiates from the child's body as the man screams in pure dread. Slowly, the girl's ethereal figure pulls away from her father's embrace, floating towards the abyss surrounded by demonic smiles. Unwilling to accept defeat, he quickly stands up and begs for Xiaoyan to wait for him. But the clown's dark dimension distorts reality, swallowing the scene with countless red and terrifying mouths. Lost in that infernal void, Li Han confesses through tears that he was the one truly responsible for ruining his daughter's life. Faced with that painful confession, the girl shows a sad smile and murmurs that she's very tired and her whole body hurts. Completely broken by those words, the man extends a trembling hand in a final, futile effort. In the blink of an eye, the child's fragile body plummets into the void, cutting through the air in a deadly dive. Pressed against the edge of the building, Li Han stares at the fatal fall in shock, his face bathed in tears. Suddenly, Zhao Fan appears and firmly grabs the man by the shoulder, ordering him not to jump from the roof under any circumstances. Trapped in the illusion, Li Han tries to break free and screams for the girl to come back. To prevent the suicide, Zhao Fan uses all his strength and pulls the man back onto the safe terrace floor. With this brutal impact, the fragments of that distorted reality begin to shatter through the air like broken glass. Grabbing the suicidal man by the collar, the author warns that jumping now would mean letting the real criminals go unpunished. Furious at the other's weakness, the protagonist throws it in the man's face that his life isn't worth wasting like this. Completely blinded by grief, the father retorts that the demon promised to bring Xiaoyan back if he jumped. Outraged by such naivety, Zhao Fan screams that giving in to that would be throwing away all the girl's true feelings. Warm memories flood the man's mind, showing all the simple, happy moments he shared with his daughter. Maintaining a firm tone, the author questions if the real Xiaoyan would want to see her father perish and become monster food. Struck by this undeniable truth, Li Han freezes as tears stream down his bruised face. However, the seductive voice from the abyss echoes again, insisting that the paternal sacrifice would bring the child back to life. Dominated once again by that evil promise, the man smiles bizarrely and agrees to trade his soul for hers. Aware of the lethal relapse, Zhao Fan's eyes widen and he screams his ally's name in an attempt to wake him from the trance. Too late for any rescue, Li Han's body plummets from the building, falling backward towards the concrete void. Without hesitating in the face of the imminent disaster, the protagonist extends his hands and invokes his power to reverse the world's gravity. Immediately, the structure of the scene completely distorts, inverting sky and earth in a vortex of crushing energy. Trapped in this altered domain, the white-haired boy manages to stabilize his own fall using the location's new physics. Acting with absolute reflexes, he pulls out his heavy black chainsaw and drives the toothed blade directly into the building's wall. Hanging by the weapon stuck in the concrete, Zhao Fan extends his other arm and manages to grab the suicidal father's body in mid-air. Even saved from certain doom, the man mumbles with a vacant gaze, stating that all this rescue effort was useless. That's when the grotesque figure of the clown demon emerged from the darkness, accusing the author of blocking the path of sacrifice. Surprised by the enemy's speed, the protagonist grinds his teeth as he realizes the leaping monster had finally awakened. Without wasting time, the creature charges furiously and digs its claws into Li Han's leg, blaming the outsider for the delay. A true tug of war forms in the inverted skies, with the demon pulling the victim while laughing sadistically and cruelly. Pressured by the double weight, the young man realizes he made a mistake by not using the time freeze as soon as he reached the roof. With his fingers slipping, he regrets acting in haste and admits he needed to be much more precise with his powers. Looking at the man's hopeless face, the author feels the weight of guilt for not being able to save Xiaoyan sooner. Unable to sustain the confrontation, the monster's strength prevails and drags both humans towards the black hole in the sky. Despite the terrible situation, Zhao Fan flashes a confident smile, knowing perfectly well that he wasn't going to meet his end at that moment. Like a true missile, the lethal figure of Tsushiyami shoots towards her beloved to intercept the fatal fall. Overcome with absolute possession, the assassin warns with a cold gaze that no one is allowed to take her master away. Her red shoes touch the void lightly, as if she were walking on invisible platforms made of pure lethal energy. In a graceful and powerful move, the girl wraps her arms around the boy's body, instantly stopping the free fall. Supported in the Yandere's protective embrace, the protagonist sighs in relief and confirms that the rescue arrived just in the nick of time. She holds him tightly against her own chest, demonstrating a sick mixture of affection and relentless protective instinct. Aware of the still active danger, the author points his finger upwards and warns that the location's inverted gravity is already returning to normal. Just then, a colossal boom shatters the dark vortex, restoring the natural physics and sending electrical discharges across the sky. Carrying the young man princess style, Xiame floats smoothly towards the city rooftops as the chaos dissipates above. Frustrated with the loss of his prey, the clown demon grinds his blood-stained teeth, watching the pair escape unscathed. Focused on the monster from a distance, the young author points with conviction and decrees that this cursed anomaly won't escape this time. Shortly after touching the firm ground of the terrace, the two land safely, ready to reverse the disadvantage of this nighttime combat. Due to the strain of overusing his magic, the young man pants exhaustedly, his face covered in sweat and his vision slightly blurred. Worried about her great love's weakened condition, the pink-haired girl carefully studies his tired face. With ragged breaths, he smiles slightly and praises his beloved's reaction time, stating he was lucky to have her around to save him. Instantly switching to a threatening tone, the assassin warns that if he tries to throw his own life away again, she herself will be the one to end him. Suddenly, the bloody figure of the demon girl charges forward at surreal speed, demanding that everyone perish in that place. Alert to the deadly assault, Xiame shoves her beloved's body aside, taking the front line of the imminent combat. With a cold and focused gaze, the assassin extends her right hand as threads of scarlet energy begin to dance between her fingers. In a lightning-fast attack, a gigantic blood spear erupts from the ground and brutally pierces the child, like Haunting's body. Impaled in the air by the lethal stake, the creature lets out a scream of absolute agony as its physical form begins to be torn apart. This brutal punishment generates a wave of red whips that spread across the scene, striking everything within a radius of several meters. During the chaos, a tactical agent appears, firing desperately at the monster's silhouette as it tried to regenerate on the ground. With his finger locked on the trigger, the soldier screams for the nefarious entity to immediately return to its original host. Continuous shots illuminate the terrace's darkness, but the anomaly refuses the order and continues to writhe in a sea of dark blood. Irritated by the useless interference, the pink-haired girl rudely orders the shooter to get out of there as quickly as possible. With a violent swing of her arm, the villainess fires a dark blast that pushes the demon's essence away from the human combatants. Bound by crimson energy tethers, the ghost girl thrashes furiously against the spiritual ropes that cut her cold skin. With black eyes overflowing with hatred, the entity warns that it won't let anyone leave and swears it will escape this magical prison. Without showing a hint of fear, Xiame gets close to the creature's face and scoffs, inviting the monster to try its luck against her. With a sadistic smile of pure madness, the assassin decrees that if she can't tear it to shreds, she'll simply blow it into 1,000 pieces right there. On a dark and gloomy bus, a boy with headphones asks the white-haired young man if he really can't see who's next to him. Feigning ignorance, Zhao Fan asks if that seat next to him wasn't completely empty. Xiame soon leans close to his face, her eyes glowing red, wanting to know if something was wrong. Keeping his cool, he smiles and replies that he was just making small talk to pass the time on the trip. Startled by the bizarre situation, the boy with headphones gets up and quickly walks down the vehicle's aisle. Mysterious passengers sit in silence, creating an oppressive and heavy atmosphere inside the public transport, until an old woman drops her pills and warns Zhao Fan that everyone there is a demon, including his girlfriend. To prove her bizarre theory, the lady points to the floor and reveals that none of those creatures have a shadow. Immediately, the young man tells Xiame that something is wrong and suggests they get off as soon as they reach the next stop. With a metallic creak, the bus doors finally open at the suburban cemetery stop. Without wasting time, Zhao Fan pulls his companion by the hand and urges her to hurry so they can get out of there as quickly as possible. Suddenly, the pink-haired girl is pulled back forcefully, showing an expression of pure shock. That boy with the headphones grabs her arm and tells her to stop pretending, stating with conviction that she isn't even human. Just then, the demonic passengers swarm over Xiame, holding the girl to forcibly take her to some school. Ignoring his girlfriend, the protagonist runs desperately, pulling the old lady by the arm and screaming that time is up. Violently, the heavy doors of the vehicle close and lock any chance of escape. Outside, the old woman states that the young man was lucky to be saved, as one false step on the demon-filled bus would be fatal. With a confident smile on his face, Zhao Fan agrees and says he really needs to thank her for the unexpected help. Through the dirty window of the departing transport, Xiaomi watches the pair with a dark and malicious gaze. Soon the vehicle disappears down the road, surrounded by a dense fog, taking the assassin far away. In a quick change of tone, the lady displays a macabre smile and questions how the young man plans to repay her for saving his life. Cold as ice, he looks over his shoulder and assures her that he will most certainly pay his debt. Overcome by a murderous aura, the old woman reveals her demonic face and extends her twisted hand, demanding her price. That's when Zhao Fan summoned his flaming black chainsaw, warning her that the reward would be sending her straight to heck. Meanwhile, inside the bus, one of the demons charges furiously at Xiaomi, ready to attack. Oblivious to the imminent chaos, the cursed vehicle continues its solitary route down the deserted road. Under a greenish light, Xiaomi sits next to a copy of Zhao Fan and asks what he's thinking about. That fake boyfriend flashes a sinister smile and replies that his mind is completely focused on her. Aware of the lie, the assassin smiles back and coldly declares that she doesn't believe a single word he said. Breaking the tension, a little demon girl compliments the villainess's beautiful dress, saying she'd love to have one just like it. Pleased with the creature's compliment, the pink-haired girl flashes a sweet and terrifying smile at the same time. Hovering over the little one, she suggests that skinning the girl would make a wonderfully beautiful dress. Terrified by the bizarre threat, the little girl cries and shakes her head frantically, refusing the offer. But the assassin gets even closer, whispering cruelly that the skinning process would be very quick. In absolute panic, the little demon grabs her own head and screams through her tears that she doesn't want that. Outraged, an old passenger stands up furiously and demands to know who dared to scare his granddaughter like that. He protectively hugs the crying girl, trying to calm the poor creature's nerves. But the act ends quickly when the little girl lifts her face, revealing red, bloodthirsty eyes. This old man also reveals his true monstrous face, stating that the intruder will pay dearly for making his granddaughter cry. Growing bizarrely, the man transforms into a gigantic zombie that casts a deadly shadow over Xiaomi. Drawn by the conflict, all the other demons on the bus stand up, their eyes glowing red. Faced with the collective threat, the villainess just smiles and agrees that she really needs to compensate the poor little girl. Eager for the massacre, the giant monster gives a grotesque smile and asks how she intends to pay. Playing with a lock of her hair, Xiaomi shoots a lethal glare and sentences that they will pay with their own lives. In a violent and merciless attack, the girl slashes the giant with a lightning, fast blow that sends blood flying everywhere. The colossal body collapses headless onto the aisle floor, leaving the other monsters paralyzed with shock. Ignoring the child who covers her face in dread, the villainess turns to the Zhao Fan copy with dark intentions. Holding the fake boyfriend's face, she confesses that she would love to treat him exactly as she would the real one. However, the assassin caresses the imposter's cheek and laments that he isn't as interesting and doesn't have warm hands. Sweating and smiling nervously, the entity tries to play it off, saying the air conditioning must be too strong. Immediately, the girl questions the excuse, making the fake Zhao Fan notice a bizarre crack appearing on his skin. In a terrifying instant, the monster's face shatters and spews dark blood as he screams in pure agony. Holding a piece of bloody flesh, she thanks him for the chance to sculpt her beloved, even if it's a cheap copy. In total desperation, the imposter raises a trembling hand and begs the psychopath to stop the torture. Without hearing his pleas, Xiaomi brutally stabs him repeatedly, stating she had waited a long time for this moment. Consumed by excruciating pain, the anomaly's face begins to melt as he tries to reach for something to save himself. The fake boyfriend's body collapses and falls apart on the seat, spilling disgusting fluids throughout the vehicle. Before disappearing completely, the creature murmurs that taking its own life is better than continuing to be tortured. Surrounded by greenish flames, the Yandere crosses her arms and scoffs at the monster's suicide, calling it pathetic. Without losing her murderous rhythm, she summons thorny red tendrils that grab the remaining demons by the neck. The little demon girl struggles uselessly as the thorns pierce her fragile body in mid-air. A true bloodstorm takes over the environment, with the girl slaughtering all the entities at once. Leaving the mortal remains behind, the villainess calmly walks towards the driver's seat. Bathed in a cold sweat, the driver tries to be friendly and mutters to himself that he should have fled with the other boy. With her hands around the man's neck from behind with a blade, she orders him to take her to her master or be offed as well. Desperate with the knife at his throat, the old man stammers, claiming he has no idea who she's looking for. With a frightening calmness, the assassin slowly closes her eyes and accepts the useless answer from that piece of trash. Immediately, she pierces the driver's chest with a brutal blow from behind, sending blood flying through the air. Soon the windshield is completely painted red, marking the end of any negotiation inside. Agonizing on the floor, the old man finally confesses that the young man was taken to the West Cemetery by the life-stealing old woman. Far away, Zhao Fan stands in the fog with his chainsaw, staring at the corpse of the lady who tried to trick him. Pressing another injured henchman, the author demands information about the music school, but the monster swears he doesn't know the Lord. This interrogation is interrupted when the protagonist turns his head, drawn by the sound of an approaching engine. With a grotesque smile on his bruised face, the entity fallen on the ground celebrates, announcing that the bus has finally arrived. Cutting through the thick cemetery fog, the cursed vehicle parks next to the young man and slowly opens its doors. The bus door opens, and Xiami steps out, walking over the mutilated bodies, covered in blood from head to toe. With an innocent smile, the pink-haired girl says they've finally met again, ignoring the carnage. The old lady watches the scene, completely terrified, realizing the girl massacred the entire bus by herself. Without showing any surprise, Zhao Fan compliments his girlfriend's work and says she cleaned up all the little problems along the way. Trembling with pure dread, the old woman murmurs that they are all gone, and that her end has come as well. The young man revs the black chainsaw and suggests that, with everyone gathered, they should get back to business immediately. He raises the weapon threateningly and proposes a bet to see who talks first about the wrong conservatory. The injured man despairs at seeing the blade so close and screams that he'll tell everything, begging for his own life. Zhao Fan smiles coldly, asking the old man to detail the story once and for all. The monster reveals that the invasion began a month ago, and that a lord shrouded in black mist stopped his bus on the road. This lord handed him a mysterious score and ordered him to play the music on the vehicle to gather his own kind. Curious about the information, Zhao Fan asks where exactly this entity ordered him to gather all the demons. The driver replies that any creature that hears the melody is drawn to perform at the music conservatory. When asked about the lord's true form, the old man denies having seen it but points out that the old lady saw the monster. Desperate at her partner's betrayal, the old woman screams furiously for being sold out so easily to the enemies. With the spinning blade near the old woman's face, Zhao Fan dryly warns that now it's her turn to talk. Overcome with dread, the old woman swears the lord hid very well, and that she only managed to see a pale hand holding the paper. To prove his usefulness, the driver raises his hands and summons the complete score, which glows with a ghostly light. The magical paper levitates in the air, emitting a sinister green energy that immediately catches the invading couple's attention. Zhao Fan analyzes the situation and concludes that the demons were controlled by that requiem and never even reached the conservatory. He also realizes they still know absolutely nothing about what happens inside the music school. Xiami smiles sadistically, finding it hilarious that the lord lures the monsters to the door only to block them from entering. Frightened by the young man's silence, the two monsters beg for mercy, believing their confession would save their lives. The author explains that strong demons usually hunt the living, but the requiem only attracts humans and blocks its own kind. Making a quick decision, Zhao Fan snatches the glowing score from the old man's hands and demands they take them to the conservatory. Crying blood, the driver begs not to go, warning that any noisy anomaly turns to dust upon approaching. Xiami's merciless gaze appears in the shadows, coldly warning that she will erase their existence right there. In a few seconds, the blade falls and blood splatters on the asphalt, eliminating the last survivors of that macabre bus. With the path clear and the score in hand, the white-haired boy calls his girlfriend to continue their journey. They leave the bloody fog behind and come face to face with the illuminated and bustling facade of the wrong music conservatory. Inside the conservatory gates, the sunlight shines brightly on couples and students walking happily. The environment seems perfect and full of life, bizarrely contrasting with the hell the couple had just escaped. Observing the flowery courtyard, Xiame comments that the place seems incredibly peaceful and full of youthful vibes. Zhao Fan agrees and notes that the atmosphere of that art school is completely different from anything they've faced before. He looks at the walls and realizes that inside and outside the gates seem to be two completely separate worlds. Discreetly, the author checks the strange dark mark etched on the back of his own hand, but decides not to say anything. Normal couples walk around them as flower petals fall gently through the tranquil university air. Suddenly, the Yandere assassin's eyes shine with pure excitement as she spots a specific storefront on the street. She excitedly points to a very elegant bridal shop, drawing her boyfriend's attention to the displayed dresses. The young man looks at the white clothes and sighs, quickly understanding the pink-haired girl's hidden desire. In an affectionate gesture, Zhao Fan holds his beloved's face and suggests they go into the shop to take a look at the pieces. Completely melted by his attitude, Xiame kisses the young man's face and sweetly whispers how wonderful he is. Arm in arm, the two cross the sunny street as if they were just another ordinary, infatuated couple in the crowd. The shop's bell chimes lightly as they enter the elegant Melody bridal shop, filled with luxurious options. A well-dressed attendant greets them immediately, cheerfully announcing that several new wedding dresses have just arrived. The elegant salesman approaches with a wide smile, complimenting the young woman's perfect figure for trying on any piece. He continues his sales pitch by informing them that students of the institution get discounts on both rentals and custom-made dresses. With a calm demeanor, Zhao Fan thanks the employee for the offer and clarifies that they are not students there. The salesman doesn't mind the response and kindly says they are welcome to look at the available models. Near the window, two conservatory students look at dresses while nervously whispering about the latest events. The short-haired girl comments that the fabric of one piece is very soft and would be perfect for the graduation ball. But her friend looks at her phone with a terrified expression and warns that another smiling suicide case has happened. Curious and frightened, the brunette quickly asks how the victim took their own life this time. The blonde whispers that it was exactly like the previous case, with the victim using a piano wire around their neck. Zhao Fan silently overhears the gossip and concludes that the conservatory's demons are much more complex than they seem. Catching the author's attention, Xiaomi's sweet voice echoes from the dressing room, asking him to help her with the dress's ties. The boy enters the cubicle, pulling the curtain, ready to help his lethal companion with the white gown. With her back to him, the girl shows her fair skin as her long pink hair falls over the luxurious wedding dress. As he carefully ties the strings, Xiaomi notices a hesitation in him and gently asks if something is wrong. Resuming his usual cold posture, he finishes the bow and replies dryly that there's nothing to worry about. With the bow finished, Zhao Fan encourages the girl to step out of the dressing room to see the result of the dress in the large mirror. Far away, the two students continue their terrified conversation, detailing that the victim's neck bones were crushed. The most bizarre detail is that all the deceased were found with wide, terrifying smiles etched on their faces. Oblivious to the tragedy, Xiaomi emerges from the cubicle radiant, showing off the beautiful white dress and holding a delicate bouquet of flowers. She turns to her boyfriend with a flushed face, asking with a voice full of hope if she looks beautiful. While admiring the beauty of his creation, the author pieces together the mental puzzle of macabre strangulations and piano wires. He concludes that such an abnormal method of taking a life must be directly linked to the Academy's main anomaly. The gossip takes a darker turn when the blonde reveals a grim rumor about someone having their own heart ripped from their chest. Without missing a chance to investigate, Zhao Fan gets up from the sofa and very politely interrupts the two girls. With his hands in his pockets, he tries to calm them and introduces himself as a horror manga artist looking for inspiration. The young man asks them to share more details about the smiling suicide and promises to pay for any information. Overcome with panic, the students back away in fear, denying they know anything before running for the street door. The girls flee, bumping into the shop's furniture, leaving the author alone in the salon while his bride tries on clothes. The elegant salesman approaches the young man and comments that those students are too terrified of the local legend. He calmly states that there isn't a single person at the wrong conservatory who doesn't know about the smiling suicide case. Inside the elegant bridal shop, the atmosphere exudes luxury and tranquility. Facing the talkative salesman, Zhao Fan coldly asks to hear the full story about the local incidents. The employee soon reports that it all started a month ago with a janitor named Yu Sin. She was found by a street piano with a bizarre smile on her face and her eyes wide open. 7 days later, Zheng Ming's body turned up in the storage room. This corpse was smiling, its head held up by piano wires, and its own heart brutally ripped from its chest. Even worse was the case of student Zhou Wen, who hanged herself in the vocal department. Before she passed, she recorded her own laughter on her phone to make the scene even more disturbing for whoever found her. Focused on the clues, the author mentally jots down the three names in his notepad. Yu Sin, Zheng Ming, and Zhou Wen form the puzzle of this dark mystery. Aware that the janitor was the starting point, he wonders what the connection between these victims could be. Suddenly, his girlfriend's sweet voice breaks his concentration in the shop. Dazzling in a traditional red dress, Su Xiaomi appears before him like a true empress. With flushed cheeks, she shyly asks how she looks in that outfit. Awed by the sight, the young man puts away his notebook and compliments his beloved without hesitation. He states with a gentle smile that any outfit looks absolutely perfect on her. Showing genuine affection, he approaches and says that the most important thing is that she likes the choice above all else. Sensing the mood, the salesman says they will make the necessary adjustments to the chosen piece. The girl quickly leans on her master's arm and assures him he doesn't need to worry about anything. When asked when they would pick up the outfit, Zhou Fan instructs the shop to proceed with the alterations. He says he will call as soon as they finish their business in the city. Outside the establishment, the couple walk side by side under the afternoon light. It seems the romantic break is over, and the macabre hunt is about to resume on the streets. Just then, a little flower girl approaches, offering fresh red tulips. With an innocent smile, the little girl calls them big brother and sister, asking them to buy her products. Zhao Fan looks down and notices something intriguing in the child's basket. The wooden sign bears the name of the flower shop, Yu Sin, the exact same as the first victim of the conservatory. Faced with this huge coincidence, he doesn't miss the opportunity and agrees to buy the flowers right there, beaming. The little girl thanks him as she hands the bouquet to the protagonist. Suddenly, A commotion violently interrupts the peace of the sunny street. Pedestrians run in desperation, muttering curses about a mad dog that has returned to torment the area. With an insane expression, a young man with blue hair tears through the crowd, displaying a sick smile and holding a wad of cash. He screams that no one will escape. Overcome by his own madness, the lunatic runs towards the couple, laughing bizarrely. He claims to have found who he was looking for. His chaotic energy fills the air around them. In a violent collision, the crazy guy forcefully knocks the little flower girl to the ground, spilling money on the pavement. He tells the girl to pick it all up and disturbingly begs for Yu Xin's forgiveness. Completely terrified, the child cries and demands he let her go from his delusions immediately. With tears in her eyes, she calls the aggressor by the name of Chen Ming and calls him a scumbag. Frightened by the scene, the onlookers back away and accuse the young man of being a true demon. Someone in the crowd just laments and says the boy has completely lost his sanity in recent days. Unbalanced, the aggressor stumbles over his own feet and collapses on the dirty concrete floor. Even on the ground, he continues to thrash and mutter things that make no sense to anyone listening. Laughing hysterically, Chen Ming accuses everyone around of being cruel murderers. Without any shame, he admits to being a murderer too and reinforces that no one will get out of this inescapable curse unharmed. Focused on the pathetic scene, Sushame exudes an impressive, lethal aura of pure evil. Her cold, predatory gaze fixes on the lunatic, ready to tear him to pieces for ruining her lovely walk. Feeling the girl's crushing pressure, the crazy guy suddenly panics. He quickly gets up and flees down the street, continuing to scream that there are no escape routes. Alone on the ground, the little florist tearfully gathers her crushed tulips. The sadness of losing her precious work breaks the heart of anyone watching the extremely depressing scene. Moved by compassion, Zhao Fan kneels and strokes the fragile child's head. In a gentle tone, he promises to buy all the ruined flowers to compensate for her financial loss. Despite the generous offer, the girl lowers her head and firmly refuses the money at that moment. She shows great dignity by stating she can't take advantage of a stranger's kindness. Determined to help, the young man proposes an alternative solution to the problem. He asks the girl to take them to the shop so he can choose a bouquet with new, intact flowers. Along the way, the girl wipes her tears and tries to change the subject to break the ice. Charmed by Xiaomi's beauty, she innocently asks if the two are about to get married. Pleased with the question, the Yandere assassin beams and confirms the engagement on the spot. Seizing the opportunity, she invites the little girl to be the flower girl at their future ceremony. With a worried expression, the child says they will need to order the flowers from her own shop for that to happen. She quickly regains her spirits and promises to give the best possible price to the couple. With an adorable smile, the little girl finally introduces herself by the name of Yulan. Awed by so much cuteness, Xiaomei playfully tugs at her boyfriend's collar. She questions how normal people can create such adorable and small creatures like that girl. Focused on the main mission, Zhao Fan ignores the flirtation and gets straight to the point. He asks the girl about the identity of the lunatic who attacked her on the street moments before. With a stern face, Yulan reveals that the scoundrel's name is indeed Chen Ming. She explains that the boy was a rich student who caused trouble and deserved to end up crazy in such a humiliating way. Upon arrival, the modest facade of the flower shop appears under the faint afternoon light. With pride in her voice, the child announces that this establishment was founded by her beloved sister, Yu Xin. Inside the premises, the smell of flowers mixes with the unusual presence of a large wooden piano. Yulan reports that she was raised alone by her older sister, who always treated her with immense affection. Touching the instrument's keys, she recalls that Yu Xin loved to sit there and play her own songs. With a choked voice, the girl states that her sister was good and deserved a much better life than she had. Overcome with anger, she blames that wretch Chen Ming for the whole family tragedy. The little girl explains that the rich kid became obsessed with her sister and wouldn't stop pursuing her despite constant rejections. Rejected, the young man went nuts and started spreading cruel rumors to destroy the florist's reputation in the neighborhood. The harassment reached the point of vandalizing the shop with red paint and explicit photos on the front door. With a farewell letter in hand, Yulan breaks down in uncontrollable tears of pain. She swears her sister wanted to live and accuses those bad people of having forced the poor innocent girl's suicide. Faced with so much pain, Zhao Fan hands over the money for the flowers and offers his sincere condolences to the orphan. He understands that the weight of human malice destroyed that family out of pure whim. Attentive to the facts, the author deduces that the deaths at the conservatory are much more than normal suicides. The way everything happened indicates that a demon is using these tragedies to send a clear message. In search of the last piece of the puzzle, the young man asks where Yu Xin's grave is in the city. Confused by the sudden interest, the little girl questions the reason for such a strange and specific question. To disguise his own intentions, Zhao Fan responds with impeccable naturalness. He justifies that he felt things special in the sad story and wishes to pay his respects to such a kind person. With 2 potted plants in her hands, Yulen looks down with deep, repressed sadness. She reveals that there is no grave because her sister's body completely disappeared before the funeral. Without waiting for more questions, the girl asks them to wait while she wraps the flowers in the back of the quiet shop. Suddenly, a dense, dark fog begins to creep across the wooden floor towards the main room. Due to the strong, putrid smell of blood, Xiaomi alerts her boyfriend to the imminent danger. The macabre energy leaks from the dark hallway, indicating that a tragedy has just occurred right there. Overcome with urgency, the author's eyes widen, and he screams the little girl's name with all the strength in his lungs. He runs towards the back of the flower shop, ready to face whatever threat may arise. In the back room, a scene of pure horror instantly freezes the protagonist's blood. The lunatic Chen Ming's body is impaled, his chest torn open, while Yulen lies unconscious on the blood-soaked floor.